Please take your seats. I'd like to get the County Board meeting underway. Thank you. I'd like to call to order this County Board meeting of Thursday, October 23rd at 6:30 p.m. Roll call, please.
Langenheim. Here. Maxwell.
Here.
McGuire. Here. Michaels. Here. Mitchell. Here. Petrie. Here. Quisenberry. Here. Richards. Rosales.
Here.
Schrader. Schwartz. Here. Alex.
Here.
Bergson. Here. Carter. Cowart. Esri.
Here.
Harper. Hartkey.
Here.
James.
Here.
Jay.
Here.
Kibler.
Here.
Kurtz.
Here. We have a quorum. Thank you. With what's happening in our society today and the fears that are prevalent throughout the country on certain issues, thank you. I'd like to read this as part of the prayer this morning, this evening. Fear keeps us focused on the past and worried about the future. If we can acknowledge our fear, we can realize that right now we're okay. Right now, today, we're still alive and our bodies are working marvelously. Our eyes can still see the beautiful sky and our ears can still hear the voices of our loved ones. Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could you read the notice of the meeting, please?
Notice is hereby given that a regular meeting of the County Board, Champaign County, Illinois will convene on October 23rd, 2014 at 6:30 p.m. in the Lyle Shields Meeting Room, Brookins Administrative Center, 1776 East Washington Street, Urbana, Illinois, in said county for the purpose of allowing and ordering payments of claims against the county, receiving and acting upon reports of committees and such other matters as may be brought before said meeting, which said meeting shall continue in session from day to day until the completion of said business.
Excuse me, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Before we approve the agenda, I'd like you to remove from the consent agenda C6. As requested by the auditor, this will be removed from consideration for this evening. So please remove consent agenda C6 from your agenda. Okay. And on your agenda, B13B, which is on the addendum, will now be moved before 13A, which is on your agenda, simply because we'll need to do the business from 13B first before we go into closed session. Ms. Petrie.
Yes, just a parliamentary question. When we remove something permanently from the consent agenda, when it's been approved unanimously and put on the consent agenda, is that an appropriate procedure, or is it a better procedure to remove it to X date?
According to Robert's rules, by unanimous consent, this body can agree to remove an item from an agenda, and that's what the chair is requesting.
So, Chris?
I would add that because this is a request from a department head, and the department head has effectively withdrawn the request, I think it becomes a moot item at that point.
Let's, again, motion to approve the agenda, please. So moved. So moved by Stan, second by Ralph. Any other changes to the addenda or agenda? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. As you'll notice, the date and time of the next regular meetings, the standing committees, committee of the whole, and the county board meeting is on your agenda. And on the consent agenda is next. We'll need a roll call As you know, C6 has been removed. So I would like a motion to accept the consent agenda by Max, second by Aaron, and I'll need a roll call vote on that, please.
Langenheim? Maxwell? McGuire? Michaels? Mitchell? Petrie?
Yes.
Quisenberry? Rosales?
Yes.
Schwartz? Alex? Bergson? Cowart? Esri?
Yes.
Hartke?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Jay? Kibler?
Yes.
Kurtz?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. Up next is public participation. We have a unique issue tonight. So I'm going to read this statement. We have a request from a member of the public to play an 8-minute video during public participation this evening. To allow this, we need a motion to suspend the rules to allow one member of the public to play a video that is 8 minutes in length. In my consideration, this is, I know they're mentioning 2, but this is one 8-minute video, and I can only allow the county board to accept that if they wish. So I'm going to ask that a motion to suspend the rules, if approved, will allow an 8-minute video to be presented. Do I have a motion to suspend the rules?
Move to suspend the rules?
I have one from Geraldo and second from Lorraine. Now, all those in, that discussion, I'm sorry. Discussion on the motion.
Yeah, I intend to vote against the suspension of the rules. Public participation is meant for members of the public to come express themselves to us. I think it would make perfect sense for the public to come talk about this video, what's important about it, and refer it to us. I don't think it's appropriate for the video to be displayed. It is not that member's message. It's not their words. It's somebody else's message. It's somebody else's words. They may agree to it. I think there are other considerations with regard to the appropriateness of the content. I know this one has been watched by people and considered not inappropriate, but if we start a precedent of allowing this, we have to pay attention to that. There's also the issue of right of performance, because it's somebody else's work. To show it here means it goes out, it's broadcast. So I'd want to make sure that that's in line with its intended use. I don't think we're prepared to do that in one meeting. I know that there are compromise suggestions that were discussed in our caucus, but I'll let the originator of those suggestions talk to them. But that's why I intend to vote against this, not because I think the public shouldn't be able to come and say what they want to say, but I think they should say it, as opposed to it being a broadcast opportunity for a video produced by someone else in somebody else's words.
Ralph and then Astrid.
I just don't consider presenting a film or anything like that as public input. It's not the words or thought of the person that's presenting them. It's just not appropriate.
Thank you. Astrid, you had
I think it
another
would be-
option.
I think it would be quite appropriate as a Justice Committee report at the COW. And by that time, we could check also on the copyright considerations.
I'm sorry. Chris? Oh, I'm sorry. Are you finished,
No.
Astrid? Yes.
I guess I agree with what a couple other members have said. I mean, I'm certainly interested in the material. This video, as I understand, is one of the ones that Ms. Berkson circulated information about to board members already. I think that it is a presentation rather than a comment, and the most appropriate way to deal with it would be to have it done as a presentation under the justice part of the committee of the whole. So I would not like to open a precedent of showing videos or third-party materials during public comment.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on this issue? Jim?
I guess my only question.
Jim, microphone.
Thank you. I guess my only question would be, we're presented as the person's discussion would also, other people's comments be lengthened to an 8-minute? It's just a question.
Yes, there would have been two back-to-back on that, Jim. All right, any other discussion? All right, all in favor of suspending the rules, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion fails. We'll move on to public participation, 5 minutes per person. James?
I would like to point out that the members of the public who wanted to show that video should check in with Ms. Berkson to have it incorporated in the committee of the whole next month.
Thank you, James. All right, let's move on to public participation. The first one on public safety, Barbara Trist. 5 minutes, please. Is Ms. Twist here? Trist?
Well, I'm sorry, I'm not
Well, have a seat first, and then turn on your microphone, and a microphone, please. Just press your button in the front. No, in the middle. You got it. Go right ahead.
Well, since we were requesting for two of us to be able to show this in 10 minutes, it seemed like a really reasonable request, because a picture is worth 1,000 words, and you're probably already tired of hearing from me because I've been here time after time to talk about mental health. But this video encapsulates what I've been trying to say to you in a very brief period of time. I already did a summary of what San Antonio has been doing, and they have saved $50 million, San Antonio and Bexar County, Texas, in 5 years, with 1.8 million people, about 9 times as many as we have. And this video is not just from the Bexar County officials, but officials around the country who have tried making different approaches to people with mental illness and who have had comprehensive, what's it called, Betty?
Criminal Justice Coordinating Council.
No, CIT.
Crisis Intervention Training.
Crisis Intervention Training, sorry, I couldn't remember what it stood for. And the most dubious doubting Thomases, you can hear their testimony in this video, have become convinced that this is the way to do it. And I already summarized, as I said 2 months ago, I summarized the broadcast that was on NPR was two days about this particular institution that now exists in Bexar County, Texas. And they have a small medical facility. I'm not sure exactly what that entails. They have a homeless shelter, and they have a crisis intervention center where the police officers can take the people who are acting out of their mental illness. There's, it shows, the one on NPR showed them, if you look on the web, it shows them dealing with a mentally ill man and speaking to the fact that he is hearing voices. And they talk him down and they get him to the center. And the main thing that these police officers like about this is that unlike when they go to an emergency room and they have to wait maybe hours with the person, they are in and out of here in 15 minutes. And so it has saved the county a lot of overtime. And they have a place to take the people. So I'm sorry, I wasn't really prepared to speak because I had only prepared like a minute to speak before the video, but I know Astrid has sent the link to everybody, right, Astrid? So I guess you can all watch it. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah, is it Bobson?
Okay, I'm here to advocate for services instead of incarceration for individuals afflicted with mental illness. I have a mentally ill son, and jails and prisons are neither designed nor funded to provide mental health treatment, yet with the erosion of public mental health services, they have increasingly become de facto mental health facilities. Without appropriate treatment, inmates with mental illness decompensate and are vulnerable to abuse and segregated and stripped naked to a solitary confinement. We need to increase state diversion programs to divert offenders with mental illness from unnecessary arrest and incarceration to a more appropriate and cost-effective community-based treatment and supervision, which will only work to the degree that any array of timely, effective services are available. In the winter of 2012, my son was arrested and charged with a misdemeanor outside throwing bottles in the apartment complex while living in Champaign County. When he appeared 15 minutes late for his hearing in May, the judge ordered him to be arrested and sent him to jail with a $20,000 bond or 30 days in jail. We petitioned the state's attorney and the judge to please court order him to have mandatory treatment in the local hospital. Motion was denied, and he was to have the local psychiatrist evaluate him, who deemed him in need of hospitalization. The judge then sentenced him to the state hospital. The state hospital had no beds available, so our son was stripped naked and confined to isolation. He had to wait for a bed to become available at the state hospital and wait in the jail. During the incarceration, our son believed they were all going to kill him and eat him during his 30 days in the jail. He believed he was being watched and feared of being killed 24 hours daily. His delusions were that all the vents, lights, air ducts, and cameras were watching him everywhere he was. He told me when he recovered that he would lie on the floor naked, afraid, just waiting for them to come kill him and eat him. He is 37 today. After 30 days of being in jail, our son stopped eating. After days of not eating, they finally began to notice he wasn't eating and drinking. The officers immediately took him to the local Champaign Hospital emergency room. They strapped him down, and the doctor injected him with medication into his arm, then released him onto the streets of Champaign, Illinois, the same day. He was still unstable and very ill in a psychotic break. We were not informed of his release, and within a few weeks, the landlord called us to inform us that our son needed medical attention and did not seem well. The court order for mandatory treatment at the state hospital was dismissed. So our son did not get the long-term medical help he needed for stabilization of the chemical imbalances in the brain. Our son is not in control of his actions when his medicines are not balanced and when he has no medicines to take. His brain is ill and controlling his behavior. The brain is sick and needs medicine to heal it, like a diabetic that needs insulin. His brain does not have the right neurotransmitter. The explanation of psychosis is too much dopamine in the brain that antipsychotic medications are in use today relies on producing a dopamine blockage between the brain cells. We need more timely, effective, community-based treatment for the mentally ill, not more jail space for the mentally ill.
Thank you. Dorothy Vera Weiss.
Good evening. I'm Dottie Vera Weiss. I live at 2103 Mills Drive in Urbana. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. The video that we plan to show makes a clear case for the benefits of having all police in San Antonio trained in crisis intervention and having teams available 24 hours a day that can respond to the situations that need that kind of response. It also shows how important it is to have a crisis center that they can take people to, again, available 24 hours a day. Other videos in the series show similar benefits of having a detoxification center for people who are under the influence of alcohol and drugs and either under the influence or withdrawing from it, so that they can be treated in a medically safe situation. This used to exist here in Champaign County, I understand, with the Prairie Center's detoxification program, and I believe it was very successful, but then they lost their state funding. What isn't emphasized in the video, but clearly underlies the success of the program in San Antonio, is the coordination and the planning that went into establishing and maintaining the system. Developing the programs is important on several counts. First, the programs decrease the number of people who are in jail and provide services that help to decrease further arrests and address the underlying problems. Second, by doing all this, they improve the quality of life for everybody in the community. And third, as Leon Evans, one of the people responsible for the programs, says in the video, and he says it in Texan, he says something like, "The taxpayer saves a ton of money." I can't speak Texan very well. It costs about $350 per individual who served in the diversion programs, compared to close to $2,300 for the jail time in a comparable situation. And so that raises the question, who in Champaign County is going to coordinate and plan these types of programs? Who's going to evaluate the data available on the people in the county jail and figure out what to do about it? At the last Facilities Committee meeting, Mr. Kimmy commented that the average number of prior arrests for people in the jail was 11. He didn't know the reason for the repeat arrests for these people. Is it homelessness? Is it drug abuse? Is it mental health problems that could be better dealt in community settings? We know there's a discrepancy with the proportion of people of African American descent in jail compared to those in the community as a whole. Is there also a racial discrepancy in the level of services available to meet the level of need in that community? Someone should have access to all that information and should be evaluating it and making plans for addressing it. The Champaign County Community Justice Task Force noted the lack of the structure to address these issues in their report in June 2013. They recommended establishing both a racial justice task force and a criminal justice coordinating council to draw on expertise from both the community, which includes the university and the service providers, and also from the criminal justice system. These may not be the exact right solutions for Champaign County, but they offer excellent models. And so right now, I urge that you look at the whole picture of criminal justice, behavioral health services, and education, and I urge that you set up structures that will help to evaluate and address these needs. By doing this, you could be increasing public safety, improving the quality of life, and saving taxpayers a ton of money. And right now, when you're in the process of considering the budget for next year, including the use of the public safety tax, this is an excellent time to shift the focus to addressing the underlying problems and to making investments in prevention. Again, I thank you for your time. I hope that you will look at the videos on the three different issues, because I think that they make both the problem real and the opportunities for a better approach to the problem very real. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stuart Levy?
Thank you all. Pass.
You pass? Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to participate? Anyone else? All right, I'm closing public participation for this evening. Thank you. Communications. Stan, have something? Do we have any communications from the board?
Was I supposed, did you want me to speak on this now? Oh, I thought I was going to do it during highway. Yeah, I gladly will. At your desk.
Thank you.
Thank you. Apparently I was asleep at the wheel tonight. At your desk is a form telling you all about the switch that has occurred, which was formerly Chris. And as this board recalls, we merged with CUMTD, and we are now known as CC Arts, as I like to call it, but it's CCARTS, and you can read what that stands for, so it's sort of nice. They've given you a lot of little information in here. They've got 8 buses up and running. They're doing real well. The ridership and everything is doing well. The numbers are up there. They are reaching out to every parts of the county now as part of the restructuring, and was ongoing with the last group near the end with Chris. And they're going to have some nice little shirts for the employees, and they're housed out at CUMTD now. And they gave you some diagrams of the buses and what their logos and their colors are going to look like. I strongly support this. I think it's been well worth the effort. It's really helped the ridership, especially up in the northern part of the county. I can't speak for John Jay's area, but we are picking up some riders there in Mahomet, and we even had one out of Foosland, Patsy, so I thought you'd be happy to hear that. If you have any questions or any concerns, just pass them on to our chairperson, and he'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Stan.
Thank you.
Chris?
I just wanted to note that we had a couple of conference calls earlier this week with Elizabeth Hennessy, William Blair regarding the refunding of, or refinancing rather, of the Series 2005B bonds. Ms. Busey and Ms. Hennessy and I believe that they have gone out for sale. I was wondering if Deb has any information that I don't have from a couple of days ago, but at the time, the final numbers appeared to be an overall cost savings during the remaining life of the bonds of about $2.4 million. Given that that is heavily backloaded, that's a savings of about $60,000 a year for each of the next 7 years, and then savings of about $330,000 a year in the 6 years following that until the retirement of the bonds in 2027. So we sold at a reasonably favorable time in the bond market, so I'm pleased to announce that we are probably going to get our money's worth from that refinancing.
And I would just add to that, that preliminary to the sale of the bonds, we did go through a rating with Moody's, and we maintained our AA2 rating, which is a positive thing and a positive indicator for Champaign County. And Chris got it exactly right. The sale was completed on Tuesday, October 21st, with overall savings of $2.4 million, achieving our debt service goal for a refunding issue.
It's nice to save money. Taxpayer money. Thank you. Let's put it that way. Patsy?
May I ask Mr. James a question concerning the rural transit, just in relationship that all the funding is federal funding? Is that accurate?
That's correct, Patsy. It always has been. No local tax money. Nothing.
Okay, thank you.
And just in case, so you realize it, if something happens to that federal funding, the service stops. They don't come to us to try and pick up the difference in the dollars. I thought you'd like to know that, Patsy. Okay, let's move on. Any other communications, by the way? Any other communications at this point? All right, let's move forward. I'll please make one change on number 10. The September 19th is really September 18th. Approval of the minutes, and I'd like a motion for both the approval of the minutes September 18th, September 23rd of 2014. Max first, Stan second. Any discussion or changes? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Let's start with the standing committees, and Lorraine on Highway.
Highway has one item for board approval, and that's the adoption of resolution number 9005, approving the Champaign-Urbana Long-Range Transportation Plan, Sustainable Choices till 2040.
Right, that's correct.
I think,
Can I have a move to approve?
I move to approve.
James moves to, the committee head, what's that? I'm sorry. We need a motion. James, motion, I need a second, please. Second? Was there a second over here on this, on the transportation, please? I would second. Oh, Josh has a second. Any discussion? Jim?
Okay, yeah, I'm on the Highway Committee, and one of the reasons why it got brought here without approval there. And I guess while I have a lot of support for Q Watts and the people that were part of this committee, and some of the things that they came up with, whether it was mass transit, high-speed rail, those types of issues, I had a couple of concerns with how this process was brought forward and how it worked. I know that they went out and did a lot of surveying of different people throughout the community This study will determine how transportation is done from from now through 2040. And it includes both Tolono and Mahomet and Champaign-Urbana, and what our roads will look like, what mass transit will look like, what bicycle lanes, all those types of things will look like. And now at the end, when it's time to be approved, it's being brought to the county board for our approval, and we don't really have an opportunity to understand what's in the program for the next 5 years is when we really make these decisions and changes to the roads or mass transit. And I have a problem with that. We can't change it. We get to vote on it, make a decision about it, but we can't make any changes to it. I think it's overly biased toward some of those things or away from roads. There's a lot of complaints about complete streets, which from people that I discuss these issues with. When we have a population of this county of over 250,000 and 80,000 of those people live out of Champaign-Urbana, but travel into Champaign-Urbana to either work at the University of Illinois or Carl or other, places of employment in Champaign. And we have a lot of people that travel from Southwest Champaign or parts of Urbana by roads, and we are planning on not focusing on some of those, as I see it, focus on some of these roads, or they get concerned when they see roads become much smaller, and as they travel, it becomes a bigger issue, and we plan on spending millions of dollars on every mile of road. I think we just need to look at those things as we move forward, because it's a problem. Once we put that $1 million worth of roads down, it's a little bit difficult to change, as Urbana's probably finding out. So I have those concerns. I hope that Kuwats and as we move forward with this plan, because I assume it's going to be passed and move forward to the federal government, that we have some balance. There's a part in this program where it talks about where cars may not be available in 20 years. I assume because there won't be gas. Well, things have changed. With fracking, we're now exporting gas as a country. Mass transit is a wonderful thing. They talk about Europe. I was there in Germany. They also have the Autobahn. These things just aren't, roads are just not extinct. So anyway, I appreciate the time to speak about this. Look at what the plan talks about, and let's make sure we have some balance. Thank you.
Patsy, next.
A couple of points of clarification. I have pulled the plan up here, and this is, we're adopting the resolution to approve this long-range plan, but however, what is up is only a draft. It isn't the final plan. So I'm not sure why we are doing this resolution at this point, because the public comment period is open through the end of October, and they will take those public comments and integrate, when appropriate, into this draft. So I need to understand why we're taking an action on this that is not, in essence, the final document from Kuwats for the 2040 transportation plan.
Deb.
My understanding is you are effectively stating that you are in support of the document as it has been drafted up to this point. I don't believe that the final document requires approval by the county board, so this is the county board's opportunity to state that you approve what has been presented to you.
And I must say that, Jim, I'm not sure if you haven't seen it, but we've had presentations of this entire program here at the county board and at a number of other meetings that I've attended, so I've seen it 3 times. You haven't seen? What's that?
And they said each time it's just a draft.
It says just a draft.
Well, I've seen it 2 or 3 times. I've made comments about it and then been told, it's not finished or it's a draft, and there's really no way for us to speak to it. And now we're being asked to say, yes, it's what we accept. And, you know, and there's a lot of very good things. I don't even have a problem with complete streets because I've cycled. But we're being asked to accept it and vote for it. If we don't have to vote for it, fine, let's not vote for it. But we're told that now it has to go to the federal government within a few months, and so we have to finish it. We have to say, yes, it's okay.
Deb, unfortunately, I wasn't at the Highway Committee meeting this month, or I could ask this question then. Based on what you just said, what happens if we vote no?
I believe that they would have to represent that the plan did not receive the, acceptance of the Champaign County Board. But my understanding, and unfortunately, none of their staff is available to be here this evening. My understanding is that this plan is ultimately approved. Jeff's here. Do you know, Jeff?
Approved through the policy committee.
Of QOTS. That's the approval body. So what you are approving here tonight is the plan as it's been presented to you, so that the approval body, when they go to approve it, know that the county board has approved what's been presented to them as the long-range plan.
So we're essentially being asked to give direction to the QOTS board, who will then decide whether or not they choose to act in accordance with our recommendation or not.
Correct.
Since Mr. Blue is here, Jeff, can you speak to this question of the timing? I mean, I agree with Ms. Petrie. It seems strange that we're being asked to include, or asked to weigh in on something before the comment period's expired. If you don't feel comfortable addressing the QOTS issue, then you don't have to, but since you're here and you seem to be the closest thing we have to a representative,
Turn on your
I'd
microphone.
appreciate anything you can tell us.
Okay, is it on? I'm not a planner. I'm an engineer, right, Betsy?
I'm being reminded of that difference constantly.
I believe this has to be approved at the QOTS meeting in December. So they're trying to get approvals by all the different government bodies prior to the QOTS meeting so that it can be taken before the policy committee and most likely approved and then forwarded to FHWA. That's my understanding of the timeline. So I don't know if the November board meeting would be too late. I don't know what you're going to get from waiting until November, because the likelihood that there's some gigantic comment that comes in that's going to change the entire look of the LRTP is very, very, very unlikely.
So would you agree with what the way Deb characterized it, that essentially we're being asked to weigh in on the draft to date?
Yes.
But that our approval is essentially a formality and that it's a recommendation to the QOTS board who will make the ultimate decision?
Right. I mean, it always makes the people who do these things feel like they've done their job if all the governing bodies weigh in and say, yeah, we like what you did. But QOTS Policy Committee, which we have a seat on, not Mitch, Al, they're the ones that ultimately vote this up or down.
Thanks, Jeff. I just had another comment to make, and then I'll
Chris.
cede the floor.
Then move forward. Ralph, don't worry.
To Mr. McGuire, I understand what you're saying, but I do want to point out, QOTS doesn't actually build anything. I mean, if a project happens, it's only going to happen because there's money, because there's a developer, because there's a need. My understanding is that a plan has to be in place and on file, essentially, in order to be eligible for federal funding for projects. So the primary goal here is to get a plan on file, but it's certainly not a foregone conclusion that development will take place in exactly the way that the plan would potentially like to see it happen. For any project to move forward, there's going to be a city engineer, a county engineer involved, there's going to be city councils, the county board's going to be involved, townships are going to be involved, depending on, where this project is. So after I heard that this generated some controversy at the highway meeting, I did go and look at go through the report in some more depth, and to be honest, I didn't see anything sufficiently objectionable here to make me want to, lay down on the tracks and keep this from going forward. Obviously, what projects happen and whether a given street is a complete street or a 4-lane street or a 2-lane street. I mean, these are decisions that are going to be made at the time a project is done in the city council chambers and the county boardroom, so I'm not concerned about having this plan on file as far as what it says about the future of the Champaign-Urbana urbanized area, so I will support it.
Thank you, Chris. We'll go with Ralph and then Stan. Ralph, microphone, please.
Does passing this foreclose our option to turn it all down in the future?
Yes.
I don't think it's going to come back to us after, it goes to Kuwats after we approve it tonight, isn't it, Jeff? Or,
Understand that Kuwats only deals with projects that have federal funding in them,
Right.
which is a very small minority of the projects that happen within the urbanized area. We have a little over $1 million a year that comes in through the MPO. All the other streetscaping projects and the stuff that Jim's talking about, the majority of those end up through an MFT or a local funded project. They're not projects that are funded through Kuwats.
Stan?
Basically, Chris said what I was going to allude to, and to me, I look at it as a vision. Doesn't mean it's ever going to come to be. It's just a vision that they have, and they put it on record. A lot of entities have to come up with a 5-year plan, tax increment. When they come to us, they have a plan to build something in there, but not sure it's coming. It could be entirely different than what they think. It's just a plan, and when it does come to us, if I'm back on this board and it takes tax money, I will vote no. Okay.
Let me just make one statement. You know, Kuwats, every 5 years reviews this plan. Is that right, Jeff? They'll look at this again if there are any for problems or changes, but every 5 years there's a review of the long-range plan. So I want you to understand that. Astrid, was there anyone else before Astrid? No. Jim, you've already spoken. Astrid, turn on your microphone, please, and turn off your others if you're not speaking. Thank you.
Still object, as I did then, to the urban sprawl. They say, oh, we're probably going to develop there, so they're going to put all the roads and all the conveniences there, which guarantees that they will sprawl instead of infilling. And I don't like that.
Jim, did you want to have a step? Go ahead.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things I do want to see happen in this plan, and I do expect to support the plan. I just want to make sure we speak into it what people have expressed to me and what my, voters or people in the community want, and what I want to see as a vision for the future for this community, so.
Thank you, Jim. Are there any other, okay, we
Gary.
have Max and we have James. Max, go ahead, please.
I was at that Highway Committee meeting, and my understanding is this is a plan with certain projects in it. It is a possibility to amend this thing if we have a project that we want to put in. Is that correct? So it's not necessarily locked in steel. If there's some changes that need to be made, it can be amended.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest, I don't know if how many of you have been to either Tucson, Arizona, or Austin, Texas, but if you try to get around in those cities, you see what happens when growth occurs without planning. It's very challenging. So, thinking about what's going to happen 40 years from now, we might poo-poo that. We might say, oh, the edge of town is not going to be out there. But I was just at the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the Urbana High School a few weeks back that the Half Century Club had, and when it was built, it was on the edge of town. And there, while I was there in Urbana High School, I saw a picture of Wiley School, where my wife teaches, and right behind it was a cornfield. So we have to have something out there that we're looking at. We may object to sprawl, and so when something happens too soon, we can vote against it. But we have to have these kind of blueprints out there so that we can complain about them, support them, talk about them, and so I'm going to support it.
Patsy.
Just a clarification, the plan can be amended, but it won't come to us for an amendment. It'll be amended by Kuwats. And I will support it as a a long-range plan that has a lot of kineticness to it, obviously. However, I would like a message sent to Kuatz that in 5 years, I hope that they time their presentation of the plans so I'm not put in a position of voting on a draft.
Okay, thank you. I don't think I'm going to be around in 2040. I'll leave that to the very much younger people on this board, like Chris and James. They might be my age then. Okay, are there any other comments on this resolution? I'm sorry, what? Ralph asked for a roll call. Do I have a second for a roll call? I have a second for a roll call. Adoption of the plan, long-range plan, a yes or no? I'd like a roll call vote, please. Gordon.
Langenheim?
I'm sorry, didn't hear you.
Langenheim? No. Maxwell?
Yes.
McGuire? Yes. Michaels? No. Mitchell?
Yes.
Petrie?
Yes.
Quisenberry?
Yes.
Rosales?
Yes.
Schwartz? Alex? Bergson? Coert? Esri?
Yes.
Hartke?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Kibler?
Yes.
Kurtz?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. Well, let's move on to facilities. We're going to ask that before we make this resolution, I have some ground rules here. We're going to have a presentation by Gorski, Risteff, the architects. I will not recognize anyone for questions until they have completed their entire presentation. Please make notes as you go along so that you can ask questions at the end of their presentation. I'd like a motion. County Facilities, Stan, would you please?
I move the adoption of resolution number 9007, authorizing direction to Gorski Risteff Architects pursuant to a contract with Gorski Risteff Architects Incorporated and Kimmy and Associates for Sheriff's Operations Master Planning for Champaign County, and I so move.
I need a second, please. I have a second by Aaron. Would you gentlemen please step up to the podium? Do you need a third chair? Are you okay? Yeah.
Mr. Kurtz, but before these guys get started, because I agree, I don't want to interrupt them, I would ask, Deb, can you clarify for the board what the decisions that are being made here tonight are? Essentially what the decision was that was faced by the facility committee that led to this non-recommendation, or, to this recommendation?
Yeah, the Facilities Committee recommendation is to, basically, Gorski Risteff has a contract to do Sheriff's Office operations master planning for both jail and law enforcement. And we currently have two sites, the Downtown Correctional Center and the satellite facility. And the County Facilities Committee determined to eliminate from further consideration the downtown facility for either jail or law enforcement operations. That is a decision point at this point in the contract that the board needs to make to give direction to Gorski Risteff about how to proceed with regard to the contract. Other options would be to keep the downtown jail in consideration for both jail and law enforcement, or to keep the downtown jail in consideration for law enforcement only or for jail only. But the recommendation from facilities is to eliminate consideration of the downtown jail for either use moving forward. That change in the contract at this juncture causes a savings in the contract cost of $17,600. If you keep the downtown facility in consideration for any use, jail, law enforcement, or one or the other, the contract cost would remain the same.
Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, your presentation, please.
Thank you very much. Again, representing our team tonight, I'm Chuck Riefstick with Gorski Riefstick Architects, Dennis Kimmy with Kimmy and Associates, and Jim Gleason with GHR Engineers. This is a progress update. Those were factored into our work plan when we started. There'd be various points where we'd come back and speak to the facilities, building and grounds committees or you. And we have completed in our work plan steps A through C. A consisting of the project kickoff, B, the analysis of some of the data we collected, and 3, a facilities evaluation that consisted of both a conditions audit of the physical facilities and a functional evaluation of the facilities. So the next task, item D, would be to develop some options for the facilities improvements and the costs, hard construction costs and staffing costs of those options. And again, tonight to be answered is should the downtown facility be removed as an option for the jail and law enforcement operations master planning?
What we'd like to start with is just an overview of some of the general findings that we have and how we're looking at things after having been in the facilities, been with the staff and talked with them about operations. As we noted, a lot of what we're going to be doing potentially throughout the rest of this is quantitative, pricing and costing things, but a lot of it is qualitative. What are we winding up with? What do we have in the way of actual operations? And the qualitative benefits of combined jail facility, which is one of the principal issues that we were looking at, are basically the following. All special needs inmates in one location, that's a critical population. Consolidation of services and programs. Simplicity for public and outside service providers. More flexibility in the sheriff's use of their staff. More efficient management of the staff and easier staff training. Elimination of inmate and food transports between the jails, simplified facility maintenance, and better, more efficient replacement housing. A key part of what we were doing and have been from the beginning is try to understand how the facilities operate and how the staffing matches up with the needs of the facilities. Because I'm sure, as most of you know, when you do your budgeting, a facility cost, construction cost, project cost is one thing, but the annual operations is another thing, and often in the case of jails, or typically in the case of jails, a much more significant number over time. Based on our staff experts' analysis, at this preliminary point, he's estimating that if we had a combined jail, it would save an estimated 5.3 to 10.6 full-time equivalent staff. And the reason for that kind of odd number is that's 5.3 full-time equivalent when you take into account the shift relief factor, time off, vacation time, training time, and so forth, the staff, based on actual numbers that we developed. It takes 5.3 full-time equivalent staffing to fill one 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week, 365-day-a-year post. Now, the task D, the next task, as we go forward, will provide more accuracy on all these staffing questions, and will also provide information on the options we develop and what the staffing impact of them are. Do want to note, though, that part of our staff experts' findings was that the staffing was deficient in certain respects at the existing facilities. So some of the savings that we might talk about actually probably should be used to make up for staff shortages that exist. Now, to kind of give you a sense, and I know we're not, task D is when we're actually calculating numbers, but this is a fairly easy one just to put forth for discussion purposes. If we assume 2.5% annual inflation, 20-year life cycle savings on staff salaries and fringes at 5.3 to 10.6 staff would be $7.25 million to $14.5 million. For those of you who think that, higher inflation is on the horizon, just to give a perspective, that would translate to $8.4 to $16.8 million of savings at a 4% inflation rate. Now, the jail has been the focus, but we don't want to forget the law enforcement side of the equation. The sheriff's operating offices, first patrol, investigations, and so forth. Now, there are some qualitative benefits, we think, of combined law enforcement and jail facility. First, more efficient management and staff training. Jail emergencies backup. While law enforcement staff are in the same building, when there is an emergency in the jail, they can be called upon to help with that emergency, which mitigates some of the staff need from a jail point of view. There's a potential economy of scale for the building systems you create when you're just creating one option. Simplified facility maintenance. We're not learning different equipment and having to order different sets of parts at different facilities. And better, more efficient replacement offices for the sheriff, housing for the jail, and support for both. Now, making changes at the downtown jail is one of the things that we focused on, what kind of systems were there and what the magnitude of the change would be. And basically, the conclusion of this, in terms of requirements to continue using the downtown for jail and sheriff's office operations, is that to make the necessary changes to bring that facility up to speed so it has a life for the next 20 years, we'd have to close it down for a year. Now, one of the key implications of that is that the downtown inmates have to be housed elsewhere. There's not much room at the satellite facility to do that, so just as a for instance, or for an example, if 45 average daily population of downtown inmates must be sent out, and that 45 is actually the 4-year average at the downtown jail, it would cost $1.15 million in per diems, excluding staff and gas and mileage for transportation costs. And we use Kankakee as the example because it's the one facility within a reasonable distance that can actually accommodate that entire population rather than going to 5, 6, 7, 8 different facilities to get 2 here, 5 there, et cetera. The other issue when we do in the transports, obviously it creates special challenges for the courts, for service providers, families, and attorneys, when we have our inmates 70 miles away. Additionally, the closure would also affect the sheriff's office. They have roughly 16,000 square feet right now, and if you replace that with rental space for the sheriff, we did a little investigation of what local large-scale spaces might cost for rental. If you were able to rent at $10 per square foot per year as an example, that would be another $160,000, plus you'd bear the cost of 2 moves, and in addition to that, the question is whatever facility occupied, did it need any changes? Particularly when you get to special things like the security storages you have for evidence. So the estimated total of the closing it down for 1 year in our minds is about $1.3 million or more with those other things potentially. Okay. Some findings that led us to the overview. Jim?
Yeah, our charge was to review the mechanical and electrical systems in this building. The process that we used was to send engineers there and spend a full day reviewing all the systems, one after the other in detail. And what we found is that pretty much anything with moving parts in it has exceeded its service life. The service life for instance, air handling units is 25 years. The building's 35 years old. The units have just come to an end. They need increasing amounts of money to keep functioning. A lot's happened in the 35 years since that building's been there. These things like energy codes, the ADA, ventilation codes, things like this would prevent us from putting these systems back in the way they were today. So what I'm saying is we couldn't just do a carbon copy of those systems today because of the changes that have happened in these codes since then. So what we're led to inevitably is a system replacement, and this is the kind of thing that drives having to shut the building down, having to pull the ceilings down.
Also, some of the other building features that hit the highlights here that have some issues at the current time. The roof needs to be replaced immediately. It's at the end of its life. There are active leaks in the building. The masonry wall has a lot of cracking, it's letting water in. Results of that you see with the chalky white efflorescence that is on several areas of the building. Also, the steel lintels are corroding. Parapet wall has shifted in one location and needs to be rebuilt. There's a lot of cracking in your corners where expansion wasn't dealt with probably correctly the first time, and so expansion found its own joint and cracked, and that's letting water in the space as well. A lot of the exterior doors are past their life. You really need to shoulder those to get them open. And windows in the day rooms and cells should be opened up so we get some real natural light into that area. In the interior, I believe Jim hit this too, sprinklers are really needed to meet health, life, safety codes. To accommodate some of the systems Jim would need to put in mechanically, the ceilings would need to be removed and replaced. Most of the finishes, except for the concrete and terrazzo, are past their life. Much of the door hardware in the building needs to be replaced, some of it simply for ADA purposes. And across the board, there's really, the building is not ADA compliant and should be.
From the functional and operational side on the jail, we've made a lot of points about different deficiencies in great detail, and we're drafting our own report at this point in detail. But to be brief about it, we fundamentally concur with the major findings of the National Institute of Corrections and ILPP about the facilities, especially with respect to the conditions of the housing in which the medical and mental health inmates are in. We consider that a critical problem, and that one that needs to be solved as quickly as possible. Those conditions, to me, are worse than the hardest of hard time at prisons, and is not a good setting at all for the individuals involved. A lot of the issues we're concerned about go directly to the health, safety, and welfare of all inmates and the staff and the service providers, and we think those are at stake with the conditions of the facilities. In our opinion, if the jail remains as is, we agree that it should be abandoned ASAP. And in that sense, the county's right to serve long-term solutions, because that facility, operationally and security-wise, is past the point of useful life. Our fix is possible. We've spent a lot of time looking at that. Can you do things? And besides the mechanical and the architectural fixes Jim and Chuck have talked about, we've looked at different ways to actually modify the space to address some of the key issues, like the lack of good surveillance and supervision of the inmate housing areas. And there are solutions to that. But in our opinion, looking at the quality of them, they're not as effective or staff efficient as new replacement facilities would be. They would inherently be much better designed and much better developed. The other thing that we've noted in there is that there really is none of the existing housing, by its nature, is convertible to proper special needs housing. Okay. Although I may say that later too, I don't know. Okay. And again, the jail staff efficiency point. So, if the downtown jail stays as is, it's too inefficient to keep, and the safety and security is too hard to ensure. If renovated, the staff efficiency and the surveillance supervision characteristics would be okay. However, and this is a key part, given the limitations of the space and the organization in the building, extra staff is still needed to move inmates to exercise and supervision, and that's required daily, 1 hour daily for every inmate. And right now, modern designs integrate exercise as well as other functions in the housing pod to reduce extra staff, in essence making the housing pod officer in charge of those things rather than an extra officer. And as far as the downtown in terms of conversion is concerned, to attain, I think, a minimum level of staff efficiency, we'd have to reach about a 90 standards compliant capacity in the 2 pods that are there. And again, new pods, by the nature of the design, would attain more efficient inmate to staff ratios than we could at a renovated downtown. Okay. Now, we looked at some of the data about the downtown jail. It was kind of interesting. Past data really suggests it has functioned as an overflow facility. If you see the chart, the colored chart in the upper right corner, the red is the population at the satellite facility since in 2014, and in the blue, stacked on top of it, is what the downtown jail population has been. So you can see it's really the junior player by a significant margin. During the first 4 months of the year, the average daily population averaged only 27.5, and with 2 pods, that is a highly staff inefficient ratio at that point when you're operating at that low of a number. And even if you were operating a 2-pod system and you got the average daily population up to 65, which is about what it is now because there's been a surge in population this summer, that's still highly inefficient the way it's being run. Okay. As far as the sheriff's function operation, 2 things that really stood out to us was the evidence storage areas and the records storage areas. They're in multiple locations. I think evidence is in 8 different locations and records are in 7. And evidence is one of the most important things in terms of the integrity of the evidence as far as case processing is concerned. Training, locker, and patrol space are also needed. And here's the thing, if the jail, and I think actually this is one of the toughest points about reusing the downtown jail, is if the jail was redesigned along the lines we've kind of intimated here, there might be enough space in the jail to reassign to long-term law enforcement needs. And after we get into Task D in more detail, we'd be able to determine that better. But one of the other critical aspects of that is that once you recaptured some jail space for the needed law enforcement space, that would be it with that building. You'd pretty much be done. So it's kind of a one-shot deal on law enforcement expansion. Okay. Generally speaking, cons, if a downtown is abandoned, we need to figure out something to do with the facility and the site itself. You know, do you sell the facility? Is there another county use that we can apply to that building and renovate for? We would lose the law enforcement site near the courthouse. It's really, as it turns out, the way the jails are used, it's a lot less critical having the jail near the courthouse as it would be actually for having the law enforcement connection, for getting records and filing documents and things like that. And we'd possibly lose some value from a correctional point of view, and this is debatable, and we've had some debates about this, possibly lose some value in having a separate low-security downtown jail facility as a reward for good behavior. You know, if you behave, we send you to the smaller operation, quieter operation, et cetera. Okay. Pros, if the downtown is abandoned, at the end of the day, it's a simpler, faster, less costly one-step project. It's not phased in any way. So there's no rentals involved, there's no moves, temporary moves involved, and there's no phased construction process. And again, the jail staffing savings, just a rough estimate, $7.25 million to $14.5 million over 20 years. General operational savings and efficiency in terms of not having to have food service serve 2 facilities, laundry serve 2 facilities, intake and release at 1 location and move inmates to a second. Programs and support would be more efficiently done. Public and service provider convenience, you know, especially again with related to medical and mental health services. There's only 1 facility for the public and the service providers to identify and go to. Ongoing facility maintenance savings with a single facility, and potentially the sale of the building could help fund replacement facilities. Okay. Now, you know, one of the big issues that we are getting into in Task D as we move forward is the planning of space, and particularly addressing the housing question, which actually was number 1 of your 10 RFP items, and figuring out how to sort out housing. And the way we're sorting out the housing is per a new classification system that the Sheriff's Office has implemented upon the recommendation of ILPP and extended help from Don Leach, who was the ILPP classification expert. They've got that in process now. They're starting to collect data for that. Unfortunately, we don't have 5-10 years of that data. We just have since actually about October of last year to look at. But based on that, some background info that we're going to be using for planning. Chuck? Just as background, the jail population averaged 193 in the 2 facilities in January, but it shot up significantly to 246 in July. And one of the things we've noted that poses a real challenge for housing planning and classification and separation is that jail populations vary widely over time. So for an example, in 2013, the last full complete year we have, the average population was 221, but we had a peak day of 267, which is 21% greater. As far as the females are concerned, and they're a very small population, only about 10% in the jail, 8 to 10%. In 2013, we had as few as 11 and as many as 31. And that really poses a challenge. Any small group like that tends to have, the smaller the group, the wider the variation on a daily basis tends to be, and the greater challenge it tends to be in terms of actually figuring out a good housing proposition for them. The males were as low as 146 and as high as 241. And so again, the housing plans that we're requesting in the RFP must accommodate these variations within the context of your new classification system. Okay. So we did a 20-day classification data snapshot using data from April through June, and this is what we found in terms of the relatively current population. 28% of the population from the survey were maximum custody by charge, and the definition of that is first degree or Class X felony, which carries a sentence of 20 years or more. In the ILPP study, using different criteria, they had documented 37% were maximum population. 73.8% had a pending felony charge. Another 1.7 were convicted of felonies awaiting transfer to Illinois Department of Corrections. So that basically means in that snapshot, if you'd walked in on any one of those 20 days, you would have found that 3/4 of the population were basically charged for or convicted of a felony. Okay. 2.3% were charged with had a pending traffic charge. 11% were actually sentenced to the facility. And the basic breakdown was 83.6% pre-sentenced and 16.4% sentenced or other, which includes people who are on probation holds, they're under a writ, held for other jurisdictions, and so forth. 9% of the population was assigned to what they referred to as special housing status. That was not only medical and mental health status, that also included people who were under what we call administrative segregation or protective custody. And the average number of prior arrests per inmate, which is a piece of data they collect in that classification set, was 11.1. Housing capabilities is something we've really talked about. Again, when we identify different classifications of inmates, and we identify that they have different needs or pose different challenges, we begin to think about what's the appropriate sort of housing to respond to that. So we begin to define things, your bed counts in terms of capabilities. And one of the key determiners thus far in our discussions with the staff have been that many classifications of inmate really need single occupancy housing, not double occupancy or dormitory. And some need to be in single level housing as opposed to double tier. But, you know, if you go to your facilities, you've been through them, you'll find that virtually all of the housing is either double occupancy or dormitory, and all of it is double tier housing with the exception of 5 segregation cells at the downtown facility. And I don't know if you can see that picture well enough in the upper right corner, but that's in essence what a double tier cell block looks like. It's essentially a set of cells over a lower set of cells with the upper set served by a stairway and a railing guarding it from the outside. Now, again, as I noted earlier, when we looked at and we started to look at the conversion potential of the cells or the fitness of some of these cell blocks for different populations, it became clear very quickly that no existing cell block is convertible to satisfy the special needs populations. So for at least that group, you know, new facilities are needed to get the job done. Now, per the classification system, when you apply some of these issues, particularly the single occupancy issue, all of a sudden our 313 beds of facilities really is operating at 236 beds of facilities. Okay. And this kind of gives you, this chart gives you a sense of the total population of the jail. The average is in the blue line. In the red line are the actual daily counts that make up those annual averages. And you can see the wide degree to which the population varies on a daily and even monthly basis. If we're operating at 236 functional beds per classification capabilities, you can see that we already had many days where we actually were functioning overcrowded. Okay. So where we are today is midpoint progress update. I guess based on the way we structured our contract, there's a decision point that we need from you so that we can move forward. And that's your resolution 9007. So to be answered is, you know, should the downtown facility be removed as an option in the jail and law enforcement operations master planning? And so I guess your aye vote is to remove the downtown from further consideration, and a no vote is to keep the downtown options under consideration. And with that.
Gentlemen, thank you. All right, let's start with Josh, then Patsy, then Stan.
Guys, if we go ahead and continue to consider the downtown jail, what is your plan coming back going to have as results? Is it just going to strictly consider usage of it to house inmates and to put the sheriff's group there? That's all it's going to consider?
Yeah. Good question. It's going to, we're going to actually develop feasible options, hopefully, of how the space might be rearranged or changed to accommodate the jail population in a way that addresses as many of the issues that we've raised as possible, and also try to see if we can accommodate law enforcement expansion.
But that is all? It's not going to consider other uses outside of law enforcement?
No, that's the focus of it, yes.
Patsy.
Thank you for the presentation. I hope the public watches this so they can keep up with our decision-making process. I have 2 parts to my comment. My first part is I have never been involved in a decision-making process on a planning issue where at almost the very beginning, I work with one option. And so from that argument alone, keeping the door open to look at both options, I think is very important. When you work on one option only, the high percentage chance of the decision being a good one in the long run usually is very low. Okay, part two has a part A and a part B. Part A has to do with the factor, and I'm making these comments from the assumption that the general agreement by the board is that all expansion will be done at the satellite jail. But that will take time to accomplish. First of all, it takes time because of our bonding, that we can't go out to bond and get money to do it for 2 to 3 years, basically. So during that time period, we still have the situation of a downtown jail, and how do we handle the individuals who will be occupying that space, be it the sheriff's staff or inmates, and the fluctuation that seems to be going on these days in numbers of inmates in there. So that gives us 3 years of having to figure out how to handle that building. And that means, from what you were saying, roof, leakage, maybe HVAC, and previously you've mentioned painting, lights, some of those things. Maybe the doors don't need to be fixed for that, but in any case, there is an investment of money. And then my part B is, so we've gotten to that 3-year period, and then we start building. So we're really up to a 3 to 5 year window of time before everything gets settled out at a newly constructed or added on satellite jail. In 3 to 5 years' time, there are a lot of things that are going to change in the community, and one of the big things that will be changing is what Urbana and MTD decide about a transportation center, what we might progress in our own thinking based on recommendations to us about drop-off center, or whatever terminology you would like to use for that. The situation of mental health is becoming more and more important in our community. That was demonstrated yesterday at the Mental Health Board and the conversations that went on there. So it seems to me that what we really need is 2 branches of information. One branch of information is Part 2A, and that is telling us what it will cost us to stabilize that building sufficiently to go through a window of time of, say, 3 to 5 years. And then a Part B, maybe that doesn't get answered right away, but it's in the wings for us, and that is, all right, when that building is no longer needed for the jail, the immediate jail purposes, then helping us think through how it can be repurposed in a very positive way, or if the choice by the board is that they sell it or exchange it for other property. There are a lot of things that can go on there. Now, my bottom line is, as much as I would argue that we want to keep all of these players in the mix as we move forward in our decision-making process, I do not see the $17,000 as it is presently written to allow us to get that kind of decision-making data, and that's what has bothered me every time I sit down and try to analyze the contract. So I've shared my concerns.
All right, let's go to Stan, then Chris.
I have some questions and some comments, but I'll start off with my questions. We know the roof's in bad shape at the downtown, and I've heard the number of close to $300,000 to fix it. Is there a possibility, because we talked about this at caucus, that that roof could be somewhat patched to extend the life 5 years?
Yeah, and I don't know the cost to replace it yet. We haven't run those numbers, but yeah, I mean, you could have we've often put a 5-year solution on a building when we know that's its anticipated continued life. So there would be ways to not have to totally replace it with a 20-year roof if you know you're only going to need it for another 5.
Okay.
Yep.
And then some of my comments are that, even when I look at this, I was never in favor of having one big campus for many reasons. But with that said, you have to look at the money, where you're going to do it, what's the most feasible, and the people that are using it, and the people that work there. When I look at the downtown jail, and we've had another study prior to this one that I think a lot of us in the room thought was going to give us other answers as to the building integrity and what have you, but we didn't. Now we've had this study, and we've somewhat gotten there, because we still don't know the true picture of that building, other than we do have some ongoing maintenance issues, and the maintenance has been a big lack for 25 years, in a sense. And we know a lot of the stuff cannot easily be replaced. We can't go out and buy a big jail cell door and slap it in there. So when we're looking at costs, we have to weigh all that out. Plus, I look at the utilities and everything else, and yes, we're still going to have them ongoing, but it's inefficient in some terms. So when you came to us for a decision, all that was taken into my account. I can't speak for everybody, but some others on the board also. I looked at it, we keep spending money on studies. We have yet to turn a wrench or to fix a brick or fix anything. And we're going to have, with this study and the last study, $250,000 or more. Then I hear, well, you know, we ought to study it a little bit more, or we ought to do this. And you know, there comes a point in time, you have to make a decision. You have to be wise with what you have. And then you got to move on. Now, I'm not saying the best option is going to be adding on to the satellite jail, but right now, that's the option we have on the plate. As far as what Patsy said about other options, someone please correct me if I'm wrong, we did look at a couple other buildings. One being where Elias is, and there's some conditions there that we can't work with. The Youth Detention Center. Any other buildings that I'm not speaking to that we looked at possibly as an option, and there was things that we couldn't do? Okay. So there has been. So I don't want people to think we've just locked in on one area. And then Mr. Rosales at our last meeting brought up that maybe when this study is done and we see what some of the costs and what the parameters, because we know there's issues at the satellite jail. We know there are issues. Maybe we could look at a whole new building. And whatever the bottom line is, the taxpayers have to sign on board with it. So to keep studying something, if I studied everything at my house this long, my house would be gone. And I know that's sort of making light of the situation. We need the studies. We need to have those things. But how many different ways are we going to study it until we get the answer somebody likes? I'm fine with what they've done. I wish there was more in depth as far as the building, the walls, and the foundation and the soil. But the study would be a lot more costly than what it is now. We got basically what we paid for. And I am in, from what I've heard, and I'm going to quote the last study that everybody was so great, we got Mr. Kalanoff in here, and he did an excellent job. But the first thing he said when he was done, close it. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen. So why do we want to continue to study something and put a bunch of money in something that's going to cost our taxpayers an arm and a leg, and we still have a 35-year-old building that has a lot of other issues other than what we're already seeing? And the life expectancy, based on what I heard tonight, even if they do the improvements, we're looking at a 20-year life expectancy. And anybody that's any work in a building knows that when you rehab, you're doubling your costs because you have to get rid of the old to put the new in. There's my comments.
Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Whichever one of you wants to answer this, jump right in. I think this is probably directed to Mr. Kimmy first. Is there any conceivable scenario in which operating 2 jails is going to be financially viable compared to operating 1?
In my experience, yes, but you'd have to be a much bigger system in terms of operational and staffing costs.
So
if we were talking 3,000 beds, not 300.
Okay, but in the case of Champaign County, I mean, your argument seems to be that the cost savings are substantial from consolidating facilities. Is that a fair statement?
I think from an operational point of view, yes. Staff savings point of view, yes. And also, I'd say from a qualitative point of view, I think the end result would be better.
Okay, and here's the tough one. Is it conceivable that rehabilitating the downtown building to use as a sheriff's office would be less expensive than building new space?
Yeah, I definitely think it would be less expensive from a construction point of view to renovate. It wouldn't be as good a facility, obviously, because we'd be spreading over 2 floors and across the Sally Port into a jail space to get it done. But yeah, it would have to be a lot less expensive. But Although I should bite my tongue on that because we still have the issues of the mechanical system replacement. Yeah, I could hear Jim's hair on his neck bristle when I was saying that. It would be less expensive, yes, than new. How much less, I don't know for the sheriff. Jim?
Yeah, Jim, are you willing to stand by that less expensive comment?
Maybe not.
We still have to address the systems. Okay, if you're going to keep the sheriff's operations in that building, we still have to address the systems, which means we pretty much have to take out what's there and put in new. That gives us the phasing problem of what do you do with the sheriff's operation while all that's going on. So there's a cost associated to that. I'm not going to have a bottom line for you, but the other thing I want to just reiterate is something Stan said. Doing remods is more expensive than building new.
Okay, so which is it? Remodeling's more expensive than building new, or it's cheaper to remodel than to build new? And I mean, I understand that you're not going to, put your engineer's stamp on this, but we're trying to get a sense for whether it's even worth considering the reuse of that facility as office space.
Chuck wants to save both of us.
Well, I think really we are, unfortunately, because we haven't done that Phase D yet, where we know what those costs are, we are kind of guessing. And there are some, bones there that are there you don't have to start over with. Now, what those are, the building's structural system, the structural roof, not the membrane that's on top of it, and those kinds of things. So there's some things that are there. But you're not just going in and starting new construction there. You got to do some demolition, and that costs money. You got to relocate the sheriff for an extended period of time. That costs money. What that bottom line is probably very close. And then you wonder, do you really have as good a facilities as you would have if you started over?
Okay, so I used the word conceivable, so I guess it is conceivable. It is certainly not a slam dunk either way, is what I'm hearing from you guys, as far as whether that would be appropriate to repurpose that as office space. Okay, and then my last question, let's say that the board comes to, and I remind everybody that we're not deciding tonight what to do with the downtown building. We're deciding whether to have these guys, as part of their study, look at the condition of the downtown building as opposed to excluding that from the study. You can draw your own conclusions about what it says about the board if we say we don't want you to even study this, but my point is that regardless of whether you guys study it or not, we will at some point have to decide what to do with that building. And if it's remodel it as a sheriff, I think it's pretty clear we're not going to decide to use that as a jail. If we decide to use that as a sheriff's facility, to use it as, I don't know, joint evidence storage facility with the other departments, I mean, there are conceivable uses for that space. If we do that, we're going to have to understand fully the condition of the structure, is my understanding. If we are to sell that building, we're obligated to fully understand the condition of the structure in order to be able to make disclosures about the building to sell it and determine who would be an appropriate buyer for it. If we decide to tear it down, we probably don't have to know quite as much about the state of the structure, but we do have to understand what the costs associated with, the risks associated with demolishing it would be. So I guess my question is, sort of a statement to the board and a question to you. I mean, I feel like we have to know more about that building than we do eventually. At this point, if the board feels like we're not going to put the sheriff there, we're not going to use it as a jail, then given that the study that these guys are doing is limited to the sheriff and the jail, it probably doesn't make any sense to have them proceed looking at the downtown building, and I would support the Facilities Committee's recommendation for them to not do that if that were the case. My question for you is, if we decide a year from now that we're going to remodel a satellite jail, we're going to expand the satellite jail, whatever it is, we're going to close the downtown jail, and we decide that we're going to move the sheriff to new space at out here at the Brookings campus, whether it's attached to the jail or otherwise. If we decide that, and then we have to ask, okay, what do we do about the downtown building? Is it going to cost us more to do that study of what the conditions of the downtown building are, preparatory to a sale, preparatory to demolition, preparatory to trying to use it for something else, then, or should we just do it now? I mean, is there any reason that it's more efficient to go ahead and answer the questions about the condition of that structure now, even if we assume we're not going to use it as a sheriff's officer or jail, or should we just save the $17,000 and worry about it later when we may have a better idea what we might actually want to use it for?
It's a contractual question, basically, is it?
So postponing
Better
that?
to just go ahead and do that now as opposed to a restart later on the summer.
I'd like to add on to that.
I'm sorry.
Chris has got a really very good question here. My question in caucus was, if we didn't spend the $17,000 now on what he is talking about, how much more would it cost for us to do a separate study a year from now on exactly what we're talking about now? And I'm assuming more than $17,000.
Well, I don't know. I mean, if at the time we decide we have no use for that building, all we're going to do is sell or tear it down, then it might be cheaper, right? But I'm trying to come to a conclusion as far as how likely it is that whatever we end up doing with that building is going to require this information that we're proposing to gather here anyway.
So let's get that answer first, and then we'll get some other questions here.
So I don't think I can answer how much. I think it might be more, because I would imagine we might be looking at it for several different uses and how it might need to be redesigned for right now undefined needs. And, you know, so we might develop a list of half a dozen needs a year from now, and we're looking at it more than the one way we're considering looking at it currently in the contract. But it's kind of a hard question to answer at this point. I would guess, I think it's going to cost more because there's also some restart involved and that type of thing, refreshing memories of things we saw last month, a year from now. But it's really kind of hard to answer.
I understand, but at this point, your contract, even if we do decide to continue with the contract as originally written, you're not proposing to look at it in the context of anything other than a jail or a sheriff's office. Is that correct?
That's the way our contract's currently written, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think Chris stole a lot of my thunder, so shame on you, Chris. Ultimately, what is lacking in our packets and information is the cost benefit of this facility for use within the jail system. Right now, everything is speculation. The word guess has been said a couple of times, and I think rightfully so. We do not know the answer to these questions. We are making assumptions. For this amount of money, I feel like Patsy's on the right track as well with respect to we need to understand what we're fully getting ourselves into. By eliminating a big piece to this puzzle, we are putting ourselves in a corner, right or wrong, on the future of what future boards will have to work with. So I fully support that we utilize this opportunity and take advantage of the expertise that has already been used over the past month and continue this study, even including the downtown jail. So the question I have, the only question I have for you guys, since I was on the committee, with respect to cost benefit, I assume that you are going to be providing, and tell me if I'm wrong, a listing of all the expenses that we would have to incur for different options of using that facility, not only just for an office or a combo office plus jail or strictly just a jail. You will be giving several options, what they will cost, and then put that in perspective to what would also have to happen at a satellite jail perspective. Here's my thought, and I want to confirm that there are, because we have the downtown jail, we have several options that would not exist if we remove it. For example, using it just for the sheriff's operations or whatever. You're going to, I assume, play with the different options of maybe updating to satellite jail and updating the downtown jail with no expansion as an option, just to see what the total cost would be and provide that as an option. That is something that will be provided if we go ahead and vote yes today. Is that true?
Yeah, yes, you basically.
No.
Pardon me?
Right? If we vote no.
If you vote no, yeah.
If we vote no,
If I want to keep the satellite jail as part of the equation, that's what I'll get.
you have to
Yes.
vote no.
I'll have to vote no.
If you affirmatively want to do that, you vote no.
Right.
Positively, thank you.
And I'm sorry that it's confusing, but it's a no to keep the jail in the study and a yes to keep it out.
Let's see if we get back to that.
So please make a note of that in your mind when you make the final
Oh, there you go.
decision.
Yes.
After Jeff, we have Astrid.
I understand that seeing what we can do with the downtown jail, say as a site for other social services, this drop-off center we need, a drunk tank, offices for other social services. That's outside the scope of your current how much would it cost to put it into your current contract?
I don't think I could answer that tonight.
I
We
knew
have to,
he was
again, work with the administration and develop just what we're looking at and assign some hours to that. And I'm sorry, but I purely be guessing tonight, and then everybody keeps that number in their head.
That was a sandbag, but we need to know it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so what we're going to decide, whether we vote yes or no, is really to decide whether the downtown jail will continue, to house inmates and whether that's possible. And it sounds like from the discussion, as I understand it, that's not likely or very expensive. So that's one part. And the other discussion I think that's been going on is about whether we should or might want to use it for the sheriff. And it seems as a building of that size, which obviously has been used to house the sheriff for a while, plus 200 inmates, it seems to be a building that's larger than really necessary for even that use. It'd be like buying a hotel just to use it for a summer retreat or something like that. So, and it's not really part of what you're discussing or doing with this study. So, and I don't really want to see us take that time and that cost to do that. I'd rather see us proceed to studying the jail and what the satellite needs and what the criminal justice system needs and what the sheriff needs to move to a more efficient, more justice system and jail. So, I want to support this resolution.
We're saying yes. He's going to say yes.
Geraldo.
Well, I have a few comments. I really don't have any questions, but I want to answer Stan since he mentioned my name in public. Stan, I thought that this was the study to end all studies, and we need to complete the studies because it already has been paid for. And we decided that we were going to go ahead and get a cost assessment of both facilities. The new jail also needs locks and infrastructure, damages to the walls, and so on and so forth. It doesn't have the proper things that Dan is looking for as far as regarding storage, as regarding an office for the sheriff's training, other activity rooms. The new jail doesn't have that. So if we just decided to put those things inside, it's not just making a pod, it's bringing that new facility up to date, which I think they're going to give us a cost estimate pretty much of what that is going to be. But in order for me to make a sound decision, I would have to turn to what Patsy Petrie said. I can't just make one decision, I have to have options. And an option I would like to see is the downtown jail being saved. I'm not ready to dismiss that and just throw it away. To demolish it, I think if you give it to somebody, it's going to cost more to raise it and take all that iron and steel out of that lot. Maybe they could refurbish it. I don't know if PACA would take it or anybody else, but I'm pretty sure there's companies to do that. But this assessment is already paid for. It's agreed upon. It was an RFQ. We selected the firm. We thought, and this is the second time this firm has come up to our county board to pitch the idea of refurbishing with their engineers and their architects, just as they've done today, to go ahead and assess both units. Not only both units, but a possible third unit. I think that there's a lot of still potential in that downtown jail for whatever we want to use it. And I think leaning towards what Harkey was saying, perhaps 5 years from now, if we could keep it going, there hasn't been a lawsuit because of the facilities in 35 years, I think maybe we could find other uses for it and use it as storage and use it as a facility for training and use those cell blocks for something else. But that when we get to that fork in the road, I would like to make those decisions then not have any decisions of what we're going to do with that building. So I would say let the firm move forward on what we all agreed on, or agreed upon, and let them do what they're being paid to do, which is assess the downtown jail and the current satellite jail. I voted to go ahead and not even address this issue at the facilities meeting, and I know that Keebler also addressed that. I think we lost the vote by one vote. So I hope that my fellow board members that are here today do not move forward to drop, I'm saying all this under one breath, to drop the decision to drop the downtown jail. I think that we ought to move forward to make a better sound decision. And I think $17,000 that's already been paid or is going to be paid to the firm once they hand in the final product is going to be a minuscule expense in comparison to what it's going to cost us 5 years from now when we decide to do other uses with it. So that's my 2 cents to the pot. I will be voting no, that we should not accept this.
Thank you.
Is that the correct vote here?
No, yes.
No
Well,
means
is no-
that.
a correct vote is what you want to vote
We're going to
for.
continue to move forward with what
I'm
we
not going to
had
tell you what's
planned.
correct or not, but
right.
no means, I think, what you've just stated.
What we had planned 2 years
Okay,
ago.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, let's move on to Stan. Wait a minute. Lorraine, Lorraine has not spoken, so.
Oh, I was gonna call for the question.
Well, you'd already called on me, so let me speak.
Go ahead, Stan.
Thank you, Chair. To answer some of the questions, I guess, like John Jay and I and some of us in our caucus looked at it, we thought we were going to be told all these great things about our building shape to the nail, to the screw head, and we're not. I hear all these arguments. Look at their contract. They're not going to give you all the answers you're looking for. They're going to tell you what they've already told us. And in our committee, gentlemen, jump in here, they told us that due to the way that building is, they could open it up some, but it will never meet the needs that we're looking at. So we're going to continue to spend good taxpayers' money, which we haven't spent yet, Mr. Rosales. It's been budgeted. Everybody sets a budget, but sometimes you never spend that money. And if you can give it back, I think the public, that's what they want us to do, make sound decisions. What you're looking at holds a lot of water, but that isn't what they're going to do. They've already told us it won't meet the needs that we've charged them to look at. The other option we have on the table is this. That doesn't mean that that's going to be the end result. As you said, why don't we look at a whole new building? If you can get the taxpayers to give you $40 million, I'll be right there with you. Well, whatever it would be.
Thank you.
But I just want to say too, that we got to move on this, and we keep spending money that's for a new building. But we got to end it somewhere, and if you want to spend $17,000 to hear no again, that's fine. But I think we're spending a lot of money just to hear that.
All right, question's been called. Do we want a roll call on this?
Point of order, you need to take a vote on whether to call the question. I think there's considerable potential
That's
discussion
true.
still to be had.
All right, need a vote on to call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Division?
Takes 2/3 to pass that. Show of hands, please, on those who call the question. Raise your hands, please. 1, 2, and you're not going to get close to 2/3. All right, we haven't, that's been voted down. It's on next, did you have something else you wanted to discuss?
I did. I had another question. I'm pretty convinced at this point that using that downtown facility as a jail is not practical. I'm not yet convinced that using it as office space is not feasible. I would make the point that regardless of what we decide here to tell these guys to do with the study, and regardless of what we may want to do in the long term, we are going to have to continue to operate that building in its current capacity for years to come. So my question to you, to any or all of the three of you, is I understand that this contract is limited to looking at this as a jail or as a sheriff's office. To what extent would the information that you would propose to develop if we vote no tonight be applicable either to the ongoing operation of that building in the short term, issues like Stan said about, can you get us through, can you get the roof to hold together for 5 years, or to future uses other than as a jail or a sheriff's office. Like Mr. Rosales brought up a storage facility. Ms. Bergson mentioned potentially using the space for social services, community agencies, that type of stuff. To what extent would the information that you're proposing to develop tonight be useful, either from an operational standpoint, relevant even, either on the operations side or for things other than a jail or a sheriff's office?
Well, Jim and I might both need to answer this. Architecturally, a lot of those items need to be done no matter what that building is used for. The masonry problems, the roof, exterior doors and windows and that type of thing. Now, mechanically, we're probably talking about different solutions if it's a facility that's used 24/7, 365 days a year versus office functions with much fewer people in it or different uses, that type of thing.
We've gathered a lot of information on the building, on both buildings, actually, in a very systematic fashion. That is, it's literally down to what type of pipe, what type of insulation, what the controls do, et cetera, et cetera. From a management and operational standpoint, as you move forward, that easily becomes a planning document and a funding document to make some of the necessary repairs on an interim basis to keep you going. I think
And sorry, if I can jump in, you're talking about the information that you're developing as a part of the contract that's not in question, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And I have that information for both buildings. Now, would that information have some value or some utility if you decided to repurpose the building to something beyond what we've been discussing here? Of course it would.
I'm sorry, I'm a little bit confused. Are we talking about the information that we are proposing to develop if we vote no, or are you talking about stuff we're developing anyway?
I'm talking about the evaluation of the existing mechanical electrical facilities in that building.
Okay, no, I understand that you've done that. So let me ask my question specifically about the additional work. I don't know whether to call it additional work or work that you wouldn't cut out of the contract. I mean, we're sort of talking about taking away work that was already proposed, but I would appreciate it. I guess, could you answer my question about usefulness of the information for operations or for non-jail and sheriff's office uses as to the $17,000 worth of work that we're talking about asking you not to do?
I think that $17,000 is going to focus our energies on a solution that's centered around, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, using that facility as a jail and a sheriff's operations office, not as, a transportation facility or something like that. Am I getting to your question?
Yeah, I think you answered my question perfectly. And since I guess we're in danger of having the question called, I'll make my statements now while I still have the floor. I really see no feasible scenario under which we're going to want to continue to operate the downtown jail as a jail. We spend millions or tens of millions of dollars on facilities, but over the lifetime of these facilities, we spend hundreds of millions of dollars on staff and on operating costs. I mean, that's where the real money in these operations is. So we need, I think it's very likely that it's going to be the operational costs that are the controlling decision here with regard to what we do at the jail. I think it's likely that the operational costs are going to be controlling what we do to the sheriff's office. I am not ready to say, forget it, we just need to tear that building down. But it sounds to me like we've gotten most of the value that we're going to get out of this study based on what we're proposing to do with what we're thinking we're probably going to use the building for. So at this point, I'm inclined to say we should probably wait to do considerable, we should take a long look at that building when we decide what to do with it. But it's probably not entirely relevant to the current study for us to do that now.
So you're saying you're going to vote yes to eliminate
Correct.
the downtown jail? Okay, from the study.
I would be more inclined to eliminate it from consideration as a jail, but not eliminate it from consideration as an office, but that really isn't an option that's on the table.
I agree. The focus of that part of the study is very specific, and we're trying to expand it, and they're trying to keep it focused. They don't want to go above that 17. I can see you guys. I see you guys talking to each other over there. I understand where your focus is. We'll go with Patsy. Go ahead.
Okay, I do have, based on what Chris has ferreted out with his questions,
Yeah.
then if I'm understanding correctly what you have answered his questions, we will basically have all of the data that will tell us what it'll cost to do the roof, what it'll cost to seal the building up, paint the building on the inside, just to get us through 3 to 5 years. If, at this point of what you've collected in information, do I understand correctly?
No, I don't believe you do. I mean, we have the data of the issues of the building, but we don't have costs associated with those of what the repair would be. That's an item, that's in Part D of our study.
So without doing Part D of our study, I mean, if we decide as a board not to do Part D of this study, then we do not have the information that tells us at all what it will cost us as a county to stabilize that building sufficiently to get us through the window of time it will take us to bond and design and do the satellite jail. Am I understanding correctly?
Yes, I think you are.
So at this point, you don't have numbers for us on this study of what would it take to renovate for a jail unless we go ahead with this study.
Yes, correct.
So we're not going to get any numbers whatsoever on the downtown jail if we decide to just concentrate on the satellite jail. Is that what
That's
you're saying?
correct. And the numbers in the next step are tied to specific solutions, and since we haven't yet done those specific solutions, we're not estimating any costs on them. Now, I know that there probably are some generic things like fix a roof that has to happen, you know, no matter what you do, but basically, the big costs that we'll be generating are tied to specific solutions as a jail or sheriff's facility. And if we stop looking at that, then we won't be generating those costs. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah.
We're
cost,
starting to
though-
get more and more information here.
Well, the
obviously.
cost that
Stan.
you're going to give us is going to be based on repurposing the cell area, the cost to do that. You're not going to look at the overall cost of the roof and when, or are you? You are. So that'll be in that report.
If we continue on in item D, studying the downtown facility, yes.
You're going to give us all those cost factors
Yeah.
for a jail
Yeah,
Right.
and redoing the sheriff's office up above.
correct.
Yeah, and as an example of what generates the overall cost estimates, a part of which is a roof repair.
And those
Our-
costs, well, excuse me, and
Yeah.
those costs, even though you'll give them to us, we can't really, from what you said at our facilities meeting, repurpose that the way the sheriff envisions that being with the mental health and handicap and some
Well,
other needs.
Yeah, our conclusion is there's no cell block either at the downtown facility or the satellite that is convertible to an appropriate special needs housing area, as an example. But in terms of, and what I mean about these things are tied to specific options, the overall cost of renovating the downtown facility for a more modern, suitable jail and sheriff's facility will involve us coming up with solutions that estimate how many linear feet of wall have to be demolished, what would be a new housing design concept, and what would that look like, and how many new walls are built, and how many new doors would have to be in there. For example, our security guy suggests the entire security system be replaced, and he suggested that there's probably a body of doors in there that need to be cut out and replaced with new locks, new frames, and everything in what is essentially a security constructed wall. And so we haven't gotten to the point where we know how many doors that is and how much it costs to do each one of those doors. So it's all of those kind of things that are a product of a specific solution that generate the costs. And if we don't pursue a specific solution of the jail as a renovated jail, then we don't have anything to base an overall cost for that.
Well, and that was going to be my final note, was that you're doing this based on those needs, not on if it's just going to be a sheriff's office or if we're going to sell that building, because the cost you come up with now, and I can point to the cost we just did for the system we put into this building, Brookins, we had told at one time for those things were going to be 160,000. They came in a lot less. These are estimates based on what you guys find. There's nothing in stone. There's nothing you can take to the bank and say, here, fix this for this. Okay, thank you.
Diane has not had her turn yet, so I'm going to jump to Diane first.
I think Stan just alluded to some of this. I think what I'm hearing is that we believe that this study will give us pricing on mechanical and regular maintenance items that should have been done all along. Those don't necessarily take a study when we already know that these things need to be replaced. And if we're not going to use that downtown, if we feel individually that that is not going to be used as a jail, then we already know that the roof, the mechanical, and those things need to be replaced. Is that what I'm thinking, right?
Sorry? Yes, the report is going to identify all the problems that require solutions. And that's been, well, hopefully you're going to learn more. Maybe a lot more than, because this has been, like Jim was alluding to, it's, his engineers, as an example, did a very detailed analysis, which you have yet to ever have. That analysis is done, and you will have that analysis. But lacking then a specific solution, we can't put together a cost for something. Yeah.
Questions for you from Ralph is first.
I think this requires a roll call vote.
Okay, roll call. We have a second on the roll call. All right, no problem. Thanks, Ralph. Jim?
Okay, so I don't really think a lot has changed, because what we're deciding not to, we don't want a jail down there, and what they're saying is that since they don't know what our final objective is, they can't give us a complete cost of what a wall might look like or a door might look like, because we're not telling them what that is. We have a list of all the things that are wrong or right about the building, but until we tell them what we want to do with the building, and we're not going to do a jail downtown, we're not going to ask for that study until we tell them what we're going to do with it. They can't tell us what that cost is going to be. That's all they're saying. So.
Jimmy, finish? Thank you. Can we save the $17,000 and move it over to just have it without the jail? Or is that, can that $17,000 be used to give us an estimate of other options besides a jail?
For the downtown.
Not yet, Chris. Okay, all right, get together, guys, pick a card, any card.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think, to answer your question, we just wanted to make sure we were all thinking the same thing. I mean,
good.
We could try to, expand the law enforcement there if that's the direction, and then there's going to be a certain area of the building that's undefined because, if I heard you right, you don't want to use it for jail. And, I guess the question would be, how many different things are we going to look at it as? Are we just going to say it's currently undefined, Jim will heat and cool it so that the pipes don't freeze and masonry doesn't continue to crack and that type of thing? And we could look at it that way for the 17.6, yes. Yeah.
Okay, that's good answer. Jeff, you're next. What's that? I had other hands up before Chris. Okay. Chris? Then
Thanks,
Jeff.
Al. I'll be quick. I'm a consultant, and I hate it when my clients do this to me, so I'm going to do it to you. What if we told you, along the lines of Mr. Chairman Kurtz is suggesting, what if we said, we don't want to use it as a jail, but we might want to use it as a sheriff's office? What are you going to charge us to look at that?
That's one of the options already covered.
Yes, that was one of the options. We had listed multiple sheriff's options, one of which was to stay there and have a renovated, expanded sheriff's operation. So that was in our next task if the downtown was still in consideration. So we had the options of, for example, all the jail stuff goes out to the satellite, but the sheriff stayed. That was already in our structure.
Okay, so for 17,000, you look at both the sheriff's office potential use and a jail potential use downtown, right? What if we told you only to look at one of those?
Probably be.
How much can we save on that?
Yeah. Like I'm sure you do. I'm going to say don't know. But I guess maybe you wouldn't expect all that 17,000 back, maybe part of it, a small part of it, because Jim would still, for example, be looking at mechanical systems for the entire whatever.
Thank you. In light of that, Mr. Chair, I would like to offer an amendment to the resolution that we eliminate the downtown jail and sheriff's office facility from consideration for continuing use as a jail.
Do I have a second from Josh? Okay, discussion on the amendment. Before I go back to the main motion, Josh has his hand, well, let me get this down. Josh, Jeff, Jim, James.
Real
Josh.
quick, from the facilities meeting we had, this was one of our options. We had 3 options presented to us. One was to eliminate it as consideration for jail, one to eliminate it as consideration for both, and one to still consider it as a sheriff's office. So those were all potential options. I'm supportive of that one. I think at this point, the investment just as well be made, because if we are going to keep the sheriff for 3 or 4 years, he is going to have a roof over his head. So I could be very supportive of the amendment as just made.
Yeah, I understand the need to want to try to maintain this building. I'm sure there's plenty of things that we could do with this building if we're not going to use it. But taking a building that was designed for a complete jail and trying to make it work for just the sheriff, and then spending the money it's going to take to bring it back up to a code for the use, including HAVC, all those things, and remodeling this building to be able to use for that, it's going to be a huge expense just for part of what it was built for. And that's a huge cost. And we're going to have them plan all of those things and retrofit that building and go through that process and take the months to do it, just to say that's probably a waste of money.
Jeff?
I don't know how to vote this way because I think eventually I want to keep both in as purposes of jail and as this. So I'm really torn on how to vote on this. But I will say that if we're going to, just from a practical standpoint, if you're going to spend 75 to 80% of whatever you're going to spend, and you're not going to get the whole picture, you might as well spend the extra 20% in this case. If it's going to cost us $14,000 versus 17, you might as well spend the remaining 3 to figure out what the jail piece of it is. So ultimately, I think I'm going to vote no on this because I would like to see both in, and I would encourage everyone just to keep both in.
Okay, we got James. You're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I intend to vote for this amendment because I don't plan on using that facility for a jail in the long term. But from what I've heard here tonight, if we vote for this amendment and take reuse as a jail, redesign as a jail off the table, what we've done is we've omitted the need to plan a new conforming jail space inside of that shell, which means that's design work that I think we're taking off the table. And then, because that design work is not done, translating that into the costs, because I heard you provide the solutions and then get to the cost based on what you know, we've taken that process off the table. So my expectation is not that it'll still cost $17,000, because we're not doing all of those things. We're doing a subset of those things. I'm not saying it's going to be $2,000 or $5,000. It might be $16,500 for all I know, but
It better not be.
it seems to me from what we learned, we're reducing the scope, the design work, and then the solution translation that comes from it off of what we would get if we said 17,000. I don't have a problem with that, losing that 20%, Jeff, because I don't think it's ever going to come to fruition, so don't spend the time. So say, if we save $2,000, okay, we saved $2,000 because we would have never used the outcome of it.
All right, we have Stan. Here we go, Stan.
Well, Jim, you forgot about the transition of the sheriff out and then back in and that cost. But the sheriff's here, and if I might, he's the one that has to deal with this. And I would like to hear his take on leaving that as a sheriff office and patrol office, and why or why not he would consider that.
Dan? You ready?
Thank you. It certainly could work. It's worked all these years. I think we would be doing a better service to the community and to our jail if the sheriff's office is attached to the jail. It's a bigger building. When we talked about this before, there is some economies of scale. If you guys decide to build everything in one spot at one time, we don't know the numbers, but there could be, I think you said, as much as a 5% savings, as opposed to doing two different projects. What's going on in the building across the street now? You're charged with managing that. What's going on there? It's very difficult to manage when we're in two different facilities. If I have everybody in one, it's a whole lot easier for me to go down a hallway and personally watch what's going on, or to call my jail superintendent, hey, come on over here, I got a problem, and him to walk down a hallway, a secure hallway, but a hallway, than to have two separate facilities. I mean, we can make it work, but I think it would inherently be a much better operation if it was all in one spot. And as I've said, and I know, Patsy, you disagree, it does give you flexibility to reuse it for something else or simply to sell it to help fund the project.
Any more on the amendment? We have a roll call vote on yes, which would eliminate, Chris, will you have to repeat your amendment?
Yeah.
Microphone, please.
I'm sorry, I don't have I guess I should look at the actual text of the resolution to make sure that what I'm saying is appropriate here. If you want to give me a chance to, does anybody have I need to get a paper
It's on
packet here
page
real quick.
12 of the packet,
Okay.
on the last, therefore it be resolved.
He's got it.
The right Illini order.
He's got it.
Deb, you can help me on this. I would assume that all that would be necessary is to strike the word "and sheriff's facility" in the last paragraph. So it says currently, county board has determined that the facility options for proceeding with activities D and F of the agreement be reduced from 3 options originally outlined in the contract, with the elimination of consideration of the downtown jail and sheriff's facility from further consideration. Well, that's the current language.
Oh, right.
Downtown jail and sheriff's facility, I guess, is the name of the building. So I would add, okay, after from further consideration, I would add as a correctional facility. Is that sufficient?
In addition, you'll have to do it under the third or fourth whereas.
I'm sorry, Jeff?
It's also it's also stated almost verbatim in the fourth whereas as well. So you have to
But
do
that's
both.
what came from committee, so I don't think you can change that, but you can change what the county board ultimately adopts.
Okay, right. Just to make it clear, I mean, I'm not probably can't wordsmith this on the fly, but the intent is to allow these guys to continue to look at the downtown building for other uses, including a sheriff's office, but not to do the work required to determine how to remodel it as a jail.
That's correct. So, what's that? Just used as a sheriff's office and not as a jail. or other use?
Well, that would be outside the scope of the contract. So I just want to strike, I want to tell these guys, don't bother looking at this as a jail. Is there any confusion over what it is that I'm proposing? And there may be, I don't know how to fill in the numbers. I mean, my assumption would be there would either be, there would be probably cost savings somewhere less than $17,600. I don't expect these guys to make, issue us a quote on the fly. But my assumption would be that by reducing the scope of the contract to exclude planning for a jail downtown, we are either saving some money or getting a better read on its feasibility as a sheriff's office. And to stress what the to reiterate something that the sheriff said, it certainly appears that it is probably not going to be cost effective to use that as a sheriff's office when you factor in the operational costs. But I'd like to see those numbers.
Okay. Now we have a yes. We'll eliminate the study for the jail, but continue on with the sheriff's. And a no means, no, that's right. No, I'm correct, I think. What?
The amendment?
The amendment, we're talking about the amendment now, and the amendment says that if we vote yes, we eliminate the study of the downtown jail, but we continue the study for the sheriff's office. Okay? Roll call, please. Do we have a roll call? Yes. We had a first and a second on a roll call. What?
That was on the main motion.
That was on the main motion. I'm sorry.
He's asking for it on this.
Alpha's asking for a roll call now. Do I have a second? I have a second. All right, roll call, please.
Langenheim? Maxwell?
Yes.
McGuire? Michaels? Mitchell?
No.
Petrie?
No.
Quisenberry? Rosales?
No.
Schwartz? Alex? Bergson? Cowart? Esri? Hartke?
Yes.
James? Jay? Kibler?
No.
Kurtz?
Yes. I've got 12-6. Is that correct? The motion carries on the amendment. Now, what do? We go back to the...
Go back to the main
Now go to the
motion.
main motion as amended. Okay? And then we have another discussion on that.
Yes.
All right, hold on. I got Jeff and Stan. Jeff?
Actually, it's just a clarification. Because we already have an outstanding resolution, if we were to vote no, I assume that prior resolution stands and they go ahead with everything, or what happens?
No, that's right. What happened?
Does nothing happen? Does Gorski Restack just stop working on this, or what happens?
You're now voting on resolution number 9007 as amended, and if it's voted down, they will continue working based on the entire expectation of the contract.
So
they
there was
would-
no
they would-
expectation set that this had to pass? You had to get formal direction on where to go?
No, this
Okay.
is your opportunity to give different direction for the contract. If you don't give different direction, they will proceed with the terms of the contract as it was negotiated.
Thank you.
Stan?
Back to the main motion, because I made it. How do I go about, within Robert's rules, without getting shut down, to strike that amendment and go with the vote I called for, that we proceed with the study on the satellite jail, and we save 17,000 and go with that avenue? How do I strike that amendment off? Do I look at Chris and say, take it off, or how do I do it?
Well, we just
By
voted
voting no on the
it, Stan.
amendment.
We
Well, I
voted
did.
on it. We voted down the jail.
Well, then, can I make an amendment to go back to the main motion? As it was presented?
I'll
That-
second that. I just want it back the way it was.
All right,
Yes or
so
no?
you're looking to overturn what we just voted on, yes, right?
That was an opinion presented by somebody. It isn't the opinion of some of us sitting here, and I think that, we kicked this around a lot. I don't know if we're doing it for whatever reason. We know, in my mind, that's a lot of money to study something that we've heard from the sheriff, we've heard from 2 studies, that we're going to continue to study something that really isn't going to be viable. Let's look at what options we have as far as a satellite or anything else, and then it's up to the taxpayers.
Point of order, isn't that voting on the same thing that we just voted on?
Yeah.
That's
that's-
redundant. You can,
I don't think that's within our rules to be able to vote on something we just voted on. Unless you reconsider, is that what would reconsider?
well, it's an amendment, so there's no motion
It's
to
an amendment,
reconsider.
so, Rachel,
I think, Stan, we still have the option, we're voting on removing this, so we can still remove it. The only thing that we changed is, first we said remove both the jail and the sheriff consideration. And the amendment said, okay, we're not going to talk about the jail, but we don't want to talk about the sheriff. We can still say, no, we don't want to talk about the sheriff. So what we're going to vote on now, you don't need to amend his, you just say, no, I don't want to talk about the sheriff. That's what we are voting now?
We're voting on the main.
Yeah.
So we need to strike the sheriff out of there also now. So then,
No,
do
you
I
just,
do I
by
amend it to
voting.
strike the sheriff and
No,
vote
by
on it?
voting that you don't, that you want to remove the sheriff, that's how you're going to strike it. You don't need to change the amendment.
what do we do here?
Point of order.
Hold on a second, please.
Point of order's been called. You can.
There's another motion on the floor and a second that we can vote on that amendment as well,
Because the original has been amended.
even though it's opposite to what we just voted on.
Correct. You can do it.
Well, then-
I wish we had somebody of a Robert's rules on this.
That was Chris's amendment. I'll make an amendment to strike the sheriff's facility from the study also. And can we have a second on it? Well, I'm making an amendment Chris made a motion to strike just the jail. I'm making a motion to strike the sheriff's facility.
Chris,
I think it's redundant. I mean, I think a majority of the board said that they wanted to include the jail. For the purposes of taking another vote, I'd be happy to second that, and people decide if they want to overturn the amendment that we just voted on.
Well, I'd feel better sleeping tonight. Thanks, Chris. He seconded it.
all right, so we're back on an amendment.
Voting on the amendment again, essentially.
Okay, on the same amendment. Now you want the amendment to say what, Stan?
Chris had the downtown jail struck out.
That's correct.
Okay. My main motion was to strike both that study out anyway. So now I'm asking,
gotcha.
since he struck out just part of it, to go back and strike out the
the
sheriff's
sheriff's.
facility so that we only focus on the
Okay.
study of the
I see
satellite
what you're
jail.
saying. Okay. All right, so, yes, we'll now strike out the sheriff's and the jail, because we've already voted on
Point of order.
Chris's.
The language of the motion, or the original motion, was to take them out.
Yes.
The motion of the amendment was to strike taking the sheriff's facility out.
Add the sheriff's office.
So what Stan wants to do is re-add taking out the sheriff's facility of consideration to the main motion. There's no striking going on. He's adding that back to the things that we're subtracting from the contract. I know that's hard to follow, but that's the way it is.
If you look at the resolution on your orange sheet of paper, if you look at the last paragraph, the amendment that you just voted on takes the language that says downtown jail and sheriff's facility from further consideration as a correctional facility, as a jail operations. That's what you amended it. Mr. James's motion is to strike that change. So you would be striking as a correctional facility. It would be back to this as it was originally presented to you. That's the amendment.
My feeling is that I didn't attend the facilities committee, so I don't have the benefit of all the conversation that took place at that point. I feel that either, with respect to the resolution, either we approve it or defeat it as it was written, because people had roundtable discussion about that. And you just have to trust committee work. And, we're also asking to renegotiate the fees, that this is not the forum to do that in. So I just think if we could just focus on the resolution as stated.
Well, we're talking to the amendment now.
And my amendment is that if it gets I mean, if we get back to that, I think you either approve it or you reject it. That's pretty simple.
Is there an amendment on the floor already?
What's that?
That it's restoring to this? So Max is just speaking in favor of that.
Yeah, okay. Astrid, did you have something?
If, an estimate on making the sheriff's office and facility is sufficiently close to using it for other purposes that I think we could guesstimate pretty well from there. And I think it's a heck of a buy at 17,000.
All right, let's vote on, did I hear a roll call? What's that? We're voting on Stan's amendment.
Yeah, and if I
Chris.
can make a pointer, I think this is basically just a motion to reconsider the amendment.
Right, that's what I said,
Right.
consider.
So yes means put it back the way it was. No means accept the amendment that we're going to tell them to look at it as a sheriff's office, but not a jail.
Right.
If we vote no finally on the, or if we vote
No
yes
on-
finally on the real motion. So yes means yes means go back to the orange sheet.
Go back to the, okay. All right.
I'm
Geraldo.
still a little confused.
Yeah, it is.
Yes means go back to the orange sheets? I thought that was the original amendment.
It is.
Resolution, right?
Yes.
So if
And
I
the no
vote-
means you're reaffirming what our vote was with Chris.
Chris is in
Oh, so we're voting on the amendment, not the resolution.
correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So a no would put us back to where Chris was. A yes would put us back to where this was originally.
Yes.
Okay? Am I got it right?
Yes.
I was just a guess, actually. I wasn't. All right, roll call, please.
Was there roll call on this too?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, roll call.
Get our money.
Go, roll
Ready?
call.
Langenheim? No. Maxwell?
Yeah.
McGuire? Michaels?
Yes.
Mitchell? Yes. Petrie?
Yes.
Quisenberry?
No.
Rosales?
No.
Schwartz? Alex?
No.
Bergson?
Jeez.
Cowart?
Wait a minute, sorry, go back to where we were. Where were we after Chris said his no? Please? What's the next name?
Woods Bergson, you're a no? No. Cowart? No. Esri?
Yes.
Hartke?
No.
James?
Resounding yes.
Jay?
Resounding more yes.
Kibler?
No.
Kurtz? Kurtz?
1 second.
Oh.
Oh.
No,
Motion failed.
fails.
We keep Alex's motion.
Now we're back to the main motion, as it is here.
As amended. No.
No,
as Alex
no,
said.
no.
As D.
As it is with the amendment. Okay. Okay. There's a, okay.
So main motion is what Alex has, which is jail operations, is stricken. Excluded.
And the sheriff's still in.
Yes.
Sheriff's still in.
And-
So-
And I'm hoping this will be friendly, but I would like to also say that you should strike the last few words by 17,600 to a fee for those activities of 64,520. And simply leave it that said elimination, thus reducing the 82,120 fee for activities D and F, just period, because that's going to have to be determined.
Deb, excuse me, but based on Quisenberry's take on that, we are not striking it, we're removing it.
Okay, removing it.
What is a yes?
So
Yes is in support of the motion as amended.
as amended, correct.
Correct.
As amended.
That was the intent of my original amendment, was not to hold them to
Right.
do the work for nothing.
Okay. So a
Okay, if I want to remove whatever it is we have now, do I vote yes or no? Because I want to remove it, so I just need to know, is it a yes or a no?
You don't want Chris's amendment?
I don't want them to look at anything that has to do with downtown jail. Do I vote yes or no?
Okay, then you vote no.
A no vote means we consider everything. A yes vote means we only consider the sheriff's office. Considering nothing downtown is no longer an option.
Is that East Champaign?
If we vote no, then we go back to the original contract and they do everything,
Correct.
right? So we need to vote yes to move forward with just the sheriff's office.
Correct.
And a no will get us back to the original. So that's where you stand, okay?
Either way, we're going to spend some money.
I'm sorry, what? As amended. Right. No, as amended by Chris. Okay. Are we ready? Do we understand where we're going here? Are there any questions or confusion? Please raise your hand now and tell me. I'm clear as a ball. You're clear? I didn't ask you for that, Stan. Okay. Roll call, please.
Langenheim.
Yes.
Maxwell.
Yes.
McGuire.
Yes.
Michaels. Mitchell.
Yes.
Petrie.
No.
Quisenberry.
Yes.
Rosales.
No.
Schwartz. Alex. Bergson. Coert. Esri.
Yes.
Hartke.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Jay. Kibler.
No.
Kurtz.
Thank goodness, we're finished. Motion carries. What?
The vote.
Yes, I said yes.
No, you didn't.
Yes. Yes. Motion, without me, yes. Motion carries. So the direction is just to do the sheriff's office, okay? And we will renegotiate the amount of money and save a lot of money. I know we're going to save a lot of money. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break. All right, let's get back to our chairs, please. We still have some work to do. All right, let's see, where are we? All right, we're on to environment and land use. Ralph, do you have anything for us this evening? All right, what's on the consent agenda? Summary of action taken on October 9th is there. All right, area responsibility, finance.
Thank you,
Chris.
Mr. Chair. I move adoption of resolution number 9008, payment of claims authorization.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move adoption of resolution number 9009, purchases not following the purchasing policy.
Second, Jeff. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance Committee recommends adoption of resolution number 9022, adopting the Champaign County Court-appointed Special Advocates fee.
Second by Jim. Any discussion? All right, hold on. I got two hands. Stan, you've done a lot of talking tonight. Astrid, you're first. What's that?
We got a list of the fees that poor people have to pay for all these things. Possession of a controlled substance, $1,427. I mean, we'd want to add 20 more to that. Retail theft shoplifting, $727. It just seems to me that we're putting enough burden on the backs of the poor, and we shouldn't put $20 more.
Who was next? Stan?
Astrid, I completely agree with you, and I stated that before, and I also would like to ask for a roll call.
I second on the roll call. I got a second on the roll call. All right, we're not finished yet. Max, and then Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's not that I'm not sympathetic to what the goals of this organization are, but I'm very concerned that, one, we seem to keep adding fees on, and as such, we've already limited the access to the courts of the poor. And then there's some other fees similar to these that could be coming along. So I think maybe we should take a look at maybe the coordinating several of those fees when they come, rather than just piecemealing it. So I intend to vote no for this resolution.
Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, Chris.
I'm
Jim.
sorry.
Jim was up next.
Yeah, Jim, sorry.
Jim.
It's okay. I guess I don't understand it. I think this program is, as far as the state's concerned, the legislature and the law, is part of the criminal justice system. I don't know where this funding is going to come from if we don't determine somehow to have it fund, and I don't know how, I look at things that we have to fund in priorities, and I don't know how this group is going to be supported unless we figure out a way to do that. And I can't think of any kids that deserve to have that support more than kids that are being abused at their homes, and families that need to have someone stand for them. And some of the cases I think they talk about, I don't know if it does affect the poor, I understand that, but some of them aren't necessarily the poor either, and I would like to find out from the court system, and people that are here from the court, if there are hardships that would keep this fee from being collected, and what fees are being collected and from who, before we make a decision and say, that it's only affecting the poor.
Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're talking about the impact of this fee on the court, as well as the impact of CASA on the court. And following on to what Mr. McGuire said, Chief Judge Stefanis is here, and I want to make sure he had an opportunity to speak if he felt so inclined.
I would appreciate it.
You're not obligated, Judge.
I'm not sure if this is the first time, but I want to welcome Chief Judge Stefanis to our county board meeting. Thank you for showing up tonight.
The CASA program is obviously incredibly important, and the reason it's important is because the state agencies that we deal with on a regular basis many times don't do the right job, don't do the job at all, or screw it into the ground. And CASA provides the court with an opportunity to correct any problems and to provide the best service we can to these children. And you've got the numbers from Rush, you know how many cases we have, how many hundreds of times they appear in court. In the years that I've been involved in criminal justice system, one of the priorities I always had was abuse and neglect cases. And when I was in the state's attorney's office, I assigned my senior prosecutors to those cases. They're incredibly important. We're dealing with children, with their lives. CASA is an integral part of the system, an important part of the system. Basically, the funding is what the county provides for the two attorneys. They're having bake sales, they're having rummage sales, they're doing everything they can to raise money. They've got money from the Sandusky Fund, which will eventually run out. It's $20. Is that going to be a burden on an individual who gets convicted of a crime, an additional burden? And the court costs have gone through the roof. We all know that. For the most part, the vast majority are never collected anyway. They're on the books, but again, this is an incredibly important program, and I can't stress enough how much the judges rely on the information and the input that we get from CASA.
Thank you, Your Honor. I appreciate it. I just want to make a statement. I'm great.
I think it's a really important program. I just think we should pay for it from the budget. I think all residents of Champaign County should be equally burdened. I don't see just why the people who are convicted or accused should be paying. I think my understanding is that the Sandusky fund is not running out yet, so we're probably fine for this year, and then next year's budget, we should put it in the budget and pay for that. I mean, absolutely support having to pay for that. I just don't think that we necessarily need to allocate it to people who are convicted for things that are not necessarily child abuse cases.
Rush, did you have something you want to add there, please?
Just to speak to the Sandusky Fund briefly, we really don't know when that's going to run out. As of 2 months ago, the NCAA and the Big Ten both relaxed almost all of the sanctions against Penn State, with the exception of the Big Ten and the monetary sanction this year. I don't know next year if that money will be there or not. That's completely up to the Big Ten and the presidents of the universities.
Ralph? Microphone, please.
We've developed a habit of slapping fees on people who are convicted of just about anything, and I don't think that this is really proper. The cost of business needs to be funded. It should be funded on our budget. You shouldn't have to pay a CASA fee if you get picked up for speeding, for goodness sakes.
Diane?
Although I sympathize with the kids and I understand that people need help, I don't believe the fee should be increased. We have a lot of non-for-profits that do deal with children in different areas, partly with the courts and part without. I really don't want to set a precedence of us trying to collect fees for one nonprofit and then the other make a case for theirs being just as important and being affected with these children. As far as the Sandusky money, to me, even though you might not have been operating the way you'd like to operate, you still were operating and have been for a long time. It's like when grandma gives you a check. One birthday you might get $5, the next birthday you might get $50. You can't count on it, never should count on it, and you shouldn't do your budget and your business as an extra to be consistently there, and I don't think you have. But at the same time, it wasn't there before. And so I think it's very difficult to set a precedence to start funding non-for-profits through these fees and also to keep a status quo because you received a grant. That was extra things that you wouldn't normally do or not able to do, yes, but not something that you consistently do because you won't have this grant forever, it runs out.
Chris?
I guess I, to some extent, understand what you're saying, but I want to make it clear, CASA is not a typical nonprofit in the community that is out there doing good for children. CASA is essentially an integral part of the justice system at this point, for the reasons that Judge DeFantis noted, that the state is, simply not able to support or pursue advocacy on behalf of these children to the extent that they need to. It's difficult imagining the juvenile court system operating without CASA at this point. So I'm not concerned about a line of, nonprofits coming in and asking us to raise fees, especially because there is a very limited set of potential organizations which can be funded for fees under this statute, one of them being CASA. So I respect my fellow board members' opinion as to whether or not this is appropriate, but it is certainly proper, it is certainly legal, it is in accordance with state statute. The county board is given the authority to levy this fee on behalf of CASA.
Jeff?
So I can echo Diane's concerns, but I think my overall concern is in the resolution, we are designating $20 for this fee. One of the concerns I have is since it's going to a specific nonprofit that we have no control over whatsoever, either at a board level or otherwise, it's hard for me to serve as a pass-through. And as actually one of the documents we received tonight articulated, we need to have some level of oversight of that monies if it is approved. What is the oversight with respect, I assume we're going to create a special fund. Is that only going to be controlled by the county board? Do we plan on putting it into a different board's jurisdiction, such as the mental health board or something equivalent? I don't know where it would go, but could you elaborate on where it would go?
Well, it will be a special fund, and at least initially, it would be placed under the county board because it is at your discretion that the money is provided. And so you saw in the document that you have before you tonight, the state's attorney is suggesting that it is not just a pass-through because of the way the statute is written, but it is anticipated that the county board is going to set up some sort of reporting requirement to ensure that the money is being used for its statutorily mandated purpose. So an annual report from CASA to the board, if you want it more frequently, those are parameters that the board would still need to establish if you do adopt the fee.
Patsy?
Yes, my comments do not indicate in any way, shape, or form my lack of understanding and the importance of this. Even though our legislators gave us the legal authority to put this fee out on CASA and several others in that statute, I don't think that a priori makes it appropriate for us to do that. What I'd really like to see happen is, first of all, I'd like to see a budget if the fee was $10. I have a lot of trouble philosophically that we are being given permission by the statute to put fees on people who are there because they have done wrong things and certain types of crimes. Second, I have problems because the statistics given to us at the last meeting is that only about 50% actually gets collected. A lot of it is waived or whatever reason. So I would really like to see what would happen if the fee was at $10, and I'd like to see what that would do for your budget. And then I would also like to see what other options are out there in the way of grants to help this program fully fund itself, and none of that is what we are getting. And I do have the last concern, even though the state's attorney stated that she has no intention of coming to us in the immediate future for any of the other possible fees that are covered under that statute. That time will come eventually. And so the range that can be put on people who are in jail is quite a wide range of money.
I'm going to make a statement here. And I want to just calm down because I am pretty upset. We're willing to spend $100,000 on reentry to give a criminal a second chance so that he can go back to the community and become an upstanding citizen. But we're not ready to give $20 for children who might be the next criminals if we don't have a CASA. What are we thinking? This is part of the justice system. These people go out and spend hours and hours of their own time to protect children from abuse, whether it be mental or physical, and stand for them in court. They work for nothing. Yet we'll sit here and talk about a $20 fee on a criminal who was convicted, yet we will give $100,000 to reentry or whatever we want to spend on the justice system here, and we're ready to let those kids go. We've got 400 children now being represented. There are hundreds more that need it. It's become a worse and worse situation, and we're willing to let these kids fall through the cracks for $20? I'm sorry, but there's something wrong with what's going on here tonight. These kids deserve our support, and so does CASA. Josh.
Lectures aside, I think that I am completely on board with what Rachel has to say, and I think there's a lot of people that are on board with the fact that this is a great program that we want to support, that we want in place, that does great work, and I don't think anybody disagrees with that. I think the disagreement is how to fund it. I am with Rachel that I think we can find the money for this in our budget next year. I do not think that increasing the burden on people even with misdemeanor charges for this situation is necessary. I think $20 is way too much. But I am absolutely willing to find the money next year to fund it through the budget process. So I'm going to be voting no.
I guess what Josh just said, Mr. Chair, is exactly what you said when you brought up the 100,000, because that's coming out of the quarter-cent safety tax. So if we're going to do that, we ought to do that for CASA instead of raising fees.
Jim?
Just kind of ask a few questions. So is the caseload for CASA increasing? Is that one of the reasons, not only just the issue of the Sandusky?
Our caseload, yes, it increases daily.
Okay.
And the severity, I would say that the severity and the complication of the cases are increasing as well because of largely what Judge DeFana said.
Okay. But currently, there is no plan to put this in our budget. And we'd have to do that, right? But right now, we've got a vehicle with its feet. And we don't know when the Sandusky money's going to show up. It's just a discussion, it's just a description.
Can we get a motion to change the budget tonight? Or put this $20 into a budget? Or next week, next month, before the end of we're still in recess, and we won't be talking on the budget until the last county board meeting on the 20th.
The budget, the fiscal 15 budget will be on the Finance Committee of the Whole agenda for final approval and adoption in November on the 13th.
How much money would we have to take from someplace else to put in this if we don't raise the fee?
Well, this $20 was going to generate about $55,000 in revenue, right? Anticipated,
That was estimated, yes.
estimated.
Not really, because they said half is expected to be
It's
collected.
half of 100,000. It should have resulted in 100,000, and they project 50% collection.
Patsy?
Well, if I'm remembering the figures given to us earlier by Chris and confirmed by Ms. Busey with the resale of the bonds, the first year, well, first 3 years, I forgot the numbers exactly. It's 60,000, well, right there it is.
Except that that has already been subtracted to provide a completely balanced public safety sales tax budget, but you can still take into consideration that that could be done.
I still think we need to vote on this resolution before we decide on going to the budget. I'd like to know if anybody want a roll call to show our community. James? We already have a roll call?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to make a suggestion, and that is, because it sounds like there's interest in looking at this at the committee of the whole, but for finance, to talk about putting it into the budget, rather than vote on this tonight, I'd like to defer this, because I don't want to kill this and then find out we don't have the will to put it in the budget. So
Would you make that
I'm
motion?
ready to make that motion, and I guess I would like to defer this to the next full county board, if that is possible.
Finance, Cal? I think we need it in finance, don't we?
I don't think we need to
Change the
consider it
budget.
again at finance.
Well, actually, if this were approved, it changes the fiscal 15 budget, because it's not in the fiscal 15 budget now.
Okay, then I will
So
move
deferring
to
it to
defer
finance is
it to
okay.
finance, Cal, then.
Do I have a second? I have a second. It seems that there seems to be a consensus that we want to put it into the budget. And I certainly hope that when we get to that chance, well, first of all, I want a discussion on deferment. Is there anyone who wants to discuss deferment to Committee of the Whole and Finance on this amendment, on this motion? There is no discussion. Okay. All in favor of deferring this to the Committee of the Whole Finance for next month, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Let's get hands, please. All those in favor of moving it to next month? 1, 2, are you taking the count? And all those in favor of tonight, please raise your hand. All right, we defer has passed, and we're going to pass it on to the Committee of the Whole next month for budget consideration. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, thank you so much, both Your Honors. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. Rush, hope to see you at the Committee of the Whole next month, please. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I move adoption of resolution number 9023, authorizing budget amendment 14-39, $25,000 pass-through to the Regional Planning Commission from the Champaign Park District. And this will need a roll call, Mr. Chairman.
Langenheim. Maxwell.
Yes.
McGuire. Michaels. Mitchell. Petrie.
Yes.
Quisenberry. Rosales.
Yes.
Schwartz. Alex. Bergson. Cowart. Esri.
Yes.
Hartke. James. Jay. Kibler.
Yes.
Kurtz.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. Let's move on to the addendum on B.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Labor Committee moves adoption of Resolution Number 9024, approving a memorandum of understanding between the Champaign County Board, AFSCME Council 31, Local 900A, and AFSCME General Unit documenting the fiscal year 2015 economic wage and health insurance terms and extension of the contract to December 31st, 2015.
Second.
You gotta have a, yep.
Does everybody understand what we're voting on? This is the one-year extension to the existing labor contract with Local 900A.
Thank you. We're now moving into closed session.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we enter into closed session pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C11 to consider litigation which is pending against or on behalf of Champaign County and litigation which is probable or imminent against Champaign County, and that the following individuals remain present: County Legal Counsel, County Treasurer, Supervisor of Assessments, Deputy County Administrator, and the Recording Secretary.
Who was the second?
Roll call vote.
Langenheim. Maxwell.
Yes.
McGuire. Michaels. Mitchell. Petrie.
Yes.
Quisenberry. Rosales.
Yes.
Schwartz. Alex. Bergson. Cowart. Esri.
Yes.
Hartke. James. Jay. Kibler. Kurtz.
We'll recess directly after the closed session, no business further after that.
That was Rebecca.
Mr. Kasich is not invited to the closed session.
You can go in my place.